Thank you all for coming. The first item on our agenda is the property at 240-252 Radnor Chester Road. We wanted to hopefully have the applicant come up.
Nick Canelli for the applicant here. If you recall, this is a zoning hearing matter, and the zoning code provides that the planning commission can make comments. I believe that's the word that it uses. It says the planning commission may make comments to a zoning application where a subdivision or land development is involved. So this project involves an additional office building on this site on the PB zoned area, and as a result, it will come back here if it does get approved, obviously, for land development approval.
Can you put up a plan, Nick?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Initially, I'll just put up, this is existing conditions. Remember, this office building is where Mainline Health basically has their administrative offices. Hopefully, the intent here is that with the addition of 70,000 square feet, additional square feet on this site, that Mainline Health will consolidate all their administrative offices to Radnor. As I mentioned, these are administrative offices. There's no doctor's offices or anything of that nature. Currently, you have the existing site. You have another office building here that's small, about 3,000 or 4,000 square foot office building that is non-conforming as to front yard setbacks, non-conforming as to use since it is in the residential area. That office building will be removed. Currently, you'll see here, this is the PBR1 zoning district. There's a ring of R1 zoning around this particular site for God knows what reason, but it is there. And also the adjacent properties of Radnor Financial over here, which is also basically in the PB and partly in the R1 zoning district. You have the Schifrin and Barroway office building, which is actually its own PLO on this side. And then you have the Radnor Way cul-de-sac over in this area. Just to take a quick look at what is existing and to be removed, you have, this is the, this belongs down here, so to speak. So you have an existing office building, existing parking lot. This will be removed and made green. And the proposal is to construct a 70,000 square foot office building, which would be attached to the existing office building. Since, remember, you reviewed this probably several months ago. Since that period of time, we've done some different things. One, the parking structure, at least in the R1 area, remains exactly the same as it is today. It is not being increased, the height's not being increased or anything of that nature. Any increase on the parking structures on the existing structure, which immediately backs up to the Radnor Financial parking lot. As I mentioned, there's an atrium here where the buildings can be connected for a single user, and everything in the R1 zone is remaining the same, and everything is now being proposed to be built in the PB zoning district. Importantly, currently we have a couple different curb cuts here that accommodate both 252, which is this old office building here to be removed, and 240. We're now consolidating those curb cuts into one curb cut with a light, with a control light, which will also control ingress and egress into the Radnor Chester Road Radnor Chester Road and Raider Road intersection with the high school, and I know Amy or Steve can address that further if the board so desires. Along this property line here, a big concern obviously with the neighbors is buffering, and so we're proposing a very extensive buffer of approximately 50 trees, 50, Shelley, 50, 20, 47, that at planting will be 20 to 25 feet high. So we're actually planting pretty high trees. And the effect of that, and Shelley has had numerous meetings with the neighbors, as effect of that, basically currently, this is what we currently see at Radnor Way, looking onto the site, and proposal with the tree plantings will be what you now see here, because it'll be basically evergreens that would be year-round also. And then also another view of what you see from this site and then what you will see in the future on this site. Again, a heavily buffered area. As to elevations, we do have some elevations to show you. That's the existing proposed office building. And as you see, and just again, just showing a conceptual with the plantings. What we need from the zoning board is we could put this building, an entire second floor on here of 100,000 square feet. Obviously, if we do that, we would have to reinforce the building, and in order to reinforce the building, we'd have to get rid of Mainline Health. Mainline Health has a lease there. They've said if that does occur, that they will leave on the lease. So really, we're not intending to do that. The other thing that Shelley could do is basically knock down the entire building and build approximately 215,000 square foot building. But again, that would mean getting rid of a tenant that's existing there and would cause a lot of problems. We've agreed, and actually, I don't know if you've seen the memo that I submitted to the zoning hearing board. We agreed to some conditions that we would agree to be imposed. One is we would limit ourselves to the proposed square footage here. We would not, and this would be in infinitum or infinitely, that we would not build any more office structures or any other structures, additional structures on this site, except for what is being proposed here. We also would agree to accommodate the school district and the township with their request to construct a traffic signal there, and we would bear the cost, at least on our side of the street, for the traffic signal, and so it would accommodate both the school, this site, as well as Radnor Chester Road. We would maintain the buffering that we're proposing, and also as to the parking structure, we would kind of make it a residential-friendly type parking structure where you have low-profile lighting, it wouldn't look like a structure, and we would have enclosure, at least in this area, where you would see the neighbors. So we're willing to address that. Shelley's met with the neighbors. He's agreed with them that they would stipulate. My understanding is the neighbors seem happy, but again, they seem very happy. Yeah, we can't necessarily speak for them, but that's basically what we're looking at here.
Was your conversation with the neighbors mainly about the buffer, or were there other major issues?
Shell, why don't you address it, because you're the one that was there.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Sheldon Gross, the general partner and managing director for 240 Radnor Chester Road Investments, LP.
Thank you.
The neighbors, their western view from November till May is of commercial and office buildings. Our program involves a significant enhancement of their western view, where they'll be looking at 20 to 25-foot Norway spruces year-round. In addition, our stormwater management program will involve the relief from the eastern properties, or through the program that we implement into our program, our stormwater management program. In addition, we're working on doing some enhancements to Radnor Way Circle, which will benefit the whole community. There's 8 houses back there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one thing too that Greg Richardson from TPD pointed out, we are also increasing we're putting a drive or a decel lane, I guess, or a left turn lane on our site that we would be paying for, that would accommodate this intersection here. Amy and Ruth.
They would be constructing the left turn lane into their site across from the high school. And then the high school would be taking care of the other side.
What's happening is the high school, from my understanding, I've been told that they're going to be widening Radnor Chester Road to the extent that they require a left-hand turn lane at that signal to go into the Radar Road and to come into our road. We're responsible for the site improvements on our side of Radnor Chester Road, which would be putting the driveway cuts in and being able to create a landing point for the pedestrian crosswalk, which will be coming from the Radnor Road or the high school side to the 240 Radnor Chester Road side.
Okay, great. Thank you for the overview. I was hoping maybe, Roger, can you take us through what's actually being asked for relief at zoning? Because we'll then be able to comment on those items more
Maybe,
clearly.
Roger, if you want me to, and you can
Yeah, I
chime
think
in.
Nick could probably
Okay.
do that better since he filled out the application.
Yeah, sure.
And Nick, while you're doing that, could you point out to the commission the location of the existing garage, the structure, and then where the proposed structure is going to end up?
The existing garage structure is located in this area. Move it here. Oh, pretty, okay. Here's the existing garage structure, parking structure. As I said, in the residential area, there's not going to be any change to that area. It will remain the same. There will be additional levels placed on the structure in this particular area here, as you see around the dotted line. And that borders the Radnor Financial Center office building, office complex.
There's a red line there. Does that go, are you at the far end there? No, up above, right in the corner. Is the parking structure going all the way to the corner of the property?
Right now, it goes to
That line?
actually, let me see, we're not increasing, the structure already goes, I think this plan may show a little bit better. You'll see this area here, the ramp is right here. And so it's existing and it remains the same.
All right.
It's not being, and matter of fact, we're not putting any addition on there. The ramp actually remains the same. That was one of the items that the neighbors were concerned about, is they didn't want any higher levels in the R1 zoning district, and we've kind of met that. We've agreed to maintain what currently exists.
Thank you.
Okay, so can we go through
Sure.
the items one by one that you're asking for zoning?
Yeah,
relief?
we need relief from the building area requirement, all right? That's the area of the lot, total lot, that is devoted to buildings.
And how much space, I mean, what's the difference between what's allowed and what you're asking for?
Alex, do we have that on here? It looks here that the building coverage existing is 20.95, and we're going to 25.9. The allowed is 20%. So we're going from 20%.
Those are percentages.
Existing is 20.95, and proposed is 25, so we're increasing it 5%. We're increasing it from 20%, or from 20.95 to 25.9.
Okay.
But the impervious does not change. Actually, we're keeping the impervious less than what currently exists on this site.
Okay, and then
So we don't need relief.
we just want to know what they all are. We
Sure.
don't want to discuss them all right now.
The other relief we need, and this is still, we're still not really certain where this stands. I don't think the township does either. There's a 50 by 50 area here, right here, that separates the site from basically the residential site on Radnor Way. And our records indicate the township owns that 50 by 50 foot area. And it juts out. So what we're doing is we do need relief on the setback from the closest point of that 50-foot area, not from this point where the residences are, or for the residential areas are, but from the area where it juts out into our property. It looks like at some
Okay.
point this was part of the property. So we need relief from that on both the setback and the buffer, because basically we're going to put the buffer right through it so that the neighbors would be accommodated. And the only other relief that we really would need is on the parking stall size. Currently, they are 9 by 19, 9 by 9.5, or 9 by 19 or 9 by 18, and we're proposing the same size stalls. And of course, then we're still maintaining the existing setback along the Radnor financial property line, but we are building up. So we probably need some sort of relief from that too. Just, it's not, we're not going above
But
the height.
you're not changing it.
But we're not changing the setback, correct.
And Nick, the size of the parking spaces, you had been given relief
Yes.
previously?
That is correct.
In what, 2009, I believe, for those there?
I believe in 2009 to construct the same size parking spots as we're proposing to construct today. And we're not talking about the surface spots. We're talking about the spots in the parking structure.
So that relief would just be an extension of what was granted before.
Weren't there two things that were granted previously? I don't
The
recall the
relief
second
on the
one.
setback.
Was that
and the
previously
relief- yeah,
granted? All right.
And relief on the size.
Okay, thank you. Board discussion?
I have a question. The parking that you're providing, is that the minimum required?
No, it's not the minimum required. Mainline Health, about once every couple weeks, brings in all their nurses, I guess, and they have a meeting. So as a result of that, they require more parking spaces than is required for this site. Now, remember, we don't have a maximum number. We've always talked about that, but in the code, there is no maximum number or limitation on maximum number. There's just a minimum number that's required. But for this proposed office building, we're actually proposing less than what would be required for this 70,000 square feet. But we still are over for the entire site because of the mainline health needs for the one day every couple weeks that they bring in, all their traveling nurses into the site.
I have some questions. Nick, one thing that concerns me greatly that you're not addressing, because I know you're not supposed to at this point, if you have 734 spaces, you're most likely going to have around at least 700 cars going in and out during the day. We're very concerned with the traffic in that area. It's already horrible. And I'm concerned with basically more than a 50% increase in the number of cars there. So I'm really reluctant to support an increase in the maximum building size over what you currently have and over what the requirement is. And if you were to cut that building down to, say, 20%, which would eliminate your need for a variance, you could also then increase your minimum green area, which would possibly bring you more into alignment with what your requirement is in that area. Has that been considered?
Yeah. One, we do have a traffic report that is in the package. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but Greg Richardson is here, so actually we could discuss that to some extent if the board so desires. And secondly, we just wouldn't build it if it was just a 20% increase, because really what's driving this is their needs of mainline health. And mainline health needs 70,000 square feet. That's why 70,000 square feet is really being built on this
However,
site.
Radnor Township does not need that many more cars
But,
on the road.
Kathy, too, remember, the traffic here, I know that, we're kind of tired of talking about King of Prussia Road and that development on King of Prussia Road.
But it's an ongoing problem.
Yeah, but remember, that concern is really on King of Prussia Road. The traffic here basically comes from Lancaster Avenue and Radnor Chester. Not that that's a great site. I mean, we all can agree, whoever driven past there to the high school or whatever, that does slow in that area. But the traffic study really indicates there's not, because of the size, you'd think 70,000 square feet is a lot, but it's not. We're really talking about, I believe in the morning AM, we're talking about peak hour 88 more trips and PM 83 trips. And of those trips, there's only a certain percentage that are actually trips that are ingressing and egressing. Remember, we've talked before about what direction the trips are going in. So of those trips, probably 25% of them are going counter direction. The study shows that basically we're only talking about a 4-second delay. So if you're a car on Lancaster Avenue turning on to Radnor Chester Road, you're going to have an extra 4 seconds to sit at the light as a result of this development.
Are you done, Kathy?
I'm finished, yes.
Okay. Nick, I have a couple of technical questions. On the zoning data table, some of these maybe staff is going to be able to answer, and some perhaps you or the applicant. The asterisk that says these calculations are assuming no additional right-of-way dedication. Has there been discussion about whether or not you're going to need to offer up more right-of-way traffic?
Amy on that.
I apologize, I wasn't listening. We had a
I was
sidebar
asking
discussion.
Amy, on their zoning data table, he has an asterisk saying that the lot area calculations are assuming no additional right-of-way dedication is going to be given. And I'm curious if there's been discussion or conversation about whether or not they're going to have to give more right-of-way.
I know one thing, I believe, and Alex is in the audience, so excuse me for turning around, but I think we're dedicating 80 feet of right-of-way, Alex, is that right? It's less now, and we're actually dedicating more, but
All right, well, this indicates that you're not doing any additional.
Radnor Chester Road, Alex Tweedy with Nave Knoll, the civil engineer for the project. The reason that note is on there is because the subdivision and land development code doesn't speak to a required right-of-way for this road because it's a PennDOT highway. And the requirement along this road is whatever PennDOT requires you to provide. So at the zoning stage, since we haven't gone through the HOP process yet, we don't know what PennDOT's going to want or what PennDOT's going to need. What we're agreeing to and what we presented to the zoning hearing board is the square footage of impervious on this site will not increase as a result of this development. Once we figure out how much right-of-way is done, we can do the actual calculations and do the math on that. But until we know what PennDOT's going to require and how the traffic study is viewed, we can't put a number on the zoning chart. So that's the basis for it. But we've always said, square footage-wise, we will not increase impervious for the property.
So you're agreeing ahead of time that if need be, if PennDOT takes more right-of-way, you will be decreasing the size of the building and/or the amount of parking you're providing in order to not further increase the impervious.
What we'll agree to is the square footage of impervious on this site will not increase after
Okay.
development.
So then the rest of my questions have to do with, I'm looking at the column that says required planned business, and I'm seeing the second asterisk that says the lot calculations are based on the consolidation of parcels. First of all, has the lot consolidation occurred?
No, that would be part of the land development
Okay,
package.
but the existing and the proposed numbers are based on not just the required PB, but the the R1 that's on the property as well, right? Those calculations are based on the entire parcel,
Correct.
including, so if you were to have taken out, but you're not building on the residential. So.
Right, we're maintaining some of the existing improvements, but we're tearing down the building.
So, Roger, is that consistent that they would use the entire property, even the part that is the residential, with the split zoning of this?
Yes, because if they didn't do that, they wouldn't be able to do this project at all if the lots were not consolidated.
No, I didn't mean about the lot consolidation. I'm saying that the calculations, you could read the zoning table and infer from it that the calculations for existing and proposed are based on just the area that's in the planned business because they list the requirements for planned business. But they have in fact used the lot area that also encompasses the R1 area in their numbers.
Okay,
And I'm just wondering if that's, they didn't just use the portion of the property that's planned business.
Again, it would be based on the lot consolidation at the time of
Okay, so the fact
subdivision
that
and
the
land
split zoning's
development.
there, it's not an issue.
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah.
And you're not doing any of the building in the R1, except for because the existing parking in the R1 was already there?
Correct.
All of that parking was there?
correct.
And then the parking calculation in terms of the required spaces, did you add the two buildings together? Or did you take the one building is 80,000 and do the one spot per 200 for the first 50 and then one per 3 for the second building? And do the same and go back to one space per 200 square feet for the first 50,000 of the second building that you're proposing? Or did you add it all together?
I'll have to double check, but I believe we just did 170,000.
So you added the two buildings together. Amy, in terms of the parking space calculation, there's two buildings. Is it appropriate to and the way our parking regulation works, for the first 50,000, they needed one spot per every 200 square feet and one spot for every 300 square feet over 50,000. Should they have done that for each building, or is it appropriate and okay to add the square footage of the buildings together,
Total square footage for the entire development.
regardless of the number of buildings?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
And going back to your last question, I'm not sure if we understood it correctly, but in order to calculate area requirements such as impervious surface or building coverage, you look at the part of the lot that is within that zoning district.
Well, that's, okay.
And that, if we go back to the last time we did a split zone, which was Jardin, that's how we did it there, and
That's-
that's how it should be done here.
So the zoning table is not correct, because the zoning table,
I can't tell you because
No, he just said it.
I don't have a copy of the plans. I haven't reviewed a copy of the plans, but that's how it should be done.
yeah, if I understood the engineer correctly, then the zoning table is not correct, because he has added in the area that's in R1 and hasn't designated it, and split it out on the zoning chart. That's where I was going, is the Jardin. I thought that we saw the two different split zones, and actually at Stratford as well. We saw
Correct.
the two different zoning districts and the applicable building setbacks and impervious coverage for each of the zoning districts.
Correct.
And that's not reflected on this zoning table. Okay. That's why I was trying to understand.
And Susan, do recall, that, or do remember here, that we're actually removing a nonconformity on the residential site, which is an existing office building. So that is.
It's a house that has a non-conforming use.
Correct, yeah,
It's just, it's a residential house with a non-conforming use.
No, it's an office, but it's all office. Yes, at one point, I believe it
Right.
was a residential house, but it is it is all office
Right.
today.
I'm having a hard time following the picture because it's kind of busy. And maybe this picture is going to show it more directly, how the new proposed driveway is going to line up to the Rader Road. And
Rader
Amy,
Road is
actually,
right.
I have a question for Amy about this. You, I believe, are pretty well acquainted with the traffic light installation that's going in at Radnor, Chester, and Rader.
Yes.
So could you walk us through what everybody's doing and what everybody's paying for there?
I would take a guess that this is not how the final driveway layout will be. This is on a state road, and as such, this layout is not typically what PennDOT will accept. So there will be a different alternative, and that would be handled during the land development stage and when they discuss it with PennDOT. But what we're going to have is the two opposing driveways for this site and for the high school site across from each other, so it would operate like a four-legged intersection.
So they're going to have to align.
Correct.
Okay.
As much as possible, yes.
Yeah, this
And-
is aligned.
I thought I understood you to say that you're paying for the light, but I actually have a very different understanding of who's paying for the
I think
light.
Brandywine paying for part of that light, and.
Correct.
From what I understand.
Or whoever did the development
Yeah, it was
next door.
Brandywine.
But the,
One-
I'm sorry.
So
One
Amy,
of the
maybe you have
things that,
clarity.
because we were talking about staging on this traffic light and getting it constructed, we had to submit the traffic signal without this driveway in order to get the approvals for PennDOT, because we're hoping to construct it prior to school starting in the fall. So there will be some equipment that will need to be put in to assist this driveway in combining and coordinating with the signal. So that's going to have to happen at a later date, and likely when he comes in and does his HOP and construction work. So there'd be a modification to the signal to include his driveway, and then there would be some different, there's a mast arm that's going to need to go in, and a few other items that would need to go in, signal indications and such.
I didn't recall that the district is widening Radnor-Chester Road.
They will be when they come through with their project. That's just something that's been discussed as far as the HOP. They're going to be putting in a deceleration lane, if I remember correctly, and there will be a left turn lane provided along this road into the high school site. And then we would have the opposing side would have a left turn lane to enter 240 RCR.
Can I just turn to staff again and just say, at this point, is there any comments you'd like to make that we haven't brought up yet?
No, I
good?
don't believe so.
All right, thank you. Let me take a moment to go to public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to make public comment on this application? It's not an application, on the zoning appeal. I can't imagine why you're all here if nobody wants to talk about this zoning appeal. Okay, thank you very much. Board discussion to continue? Who has a?
Did we get any reports from the neighbors from the meeting they were going to be having?
Our report from the neighbors came from the applicant. We don't have anything directly from the neighbors, so we are trusting in the description of that conversation that
Because I know
the
that you had said-
applicant had about the buffers and everything.
I met with the neighbors as of last night, and they couldn't be here tonight, but they will be at the zoning hearing supporting the petition or the application
Okay.
at that point.
Thank you.
So we've got the approval. I would like to make one more comment.
Go ahead.
The 734 spaces that are provided, one point that needs to be addressed is there twice to three times a month, Mainline Health conducts training sessions at the site. They don't necessarily need the spaces for this on an ongoing basis. So when you think in terms of 734 parking spaces, there are possibly 3 days during the month that those spaces will be occupied. Other than that, there'll be about 100 spaces that aren't occupied on the site that are flex spaces. But in order to accommodate this particular use for the site, we need to be able to have those flex spaces available. And keeping in mind, the tenant that we have services the community with nurses and hospice services, home nursing and hospice services. Those associates, those mainline associates are coming and going at various times during the day. They're not coming and going at peak hours during the day. So the need for the spaces are predominantly for flex spaces and not necessarily perceived to be, they all show up between 7 and 9 a.m. in the morning and leave between 4 and 6 in the evening, and there's 730 cars that would be hitting the community. That's not the case at all. Thank you.
I'd have one question about the buffers in your discussion with the neighbors. I understand the need for a buffer and that they're happy with what you've chosen, but as buffers go, that's not exactly cutting edge. Just having the one kind of very plain evergreen. I understand it serves its purpose, but it's really more of a wall than a buffer.
There's an existing buffer, a planted buffer at this point in time.
Okay.
But this is to supplement the existing buffer.
So this will mix in with a regular
Yes,
landscaped.
If
Okay.
there's
That's what I wanted
trees
to
there
know.
that are 50 to 75 feet in height, and what we're planting are trees that are between 25 and 30 feet at planting, and they're Norway spruces. And this is to present to the community, because the homes that are impacted are not just impacted by their view of 240 Radnor Chester Road. They're impacted by their entire western view from their homes. And as a matter of fact, the least obtrusive view is of 240 Radnor Chester Road. They have, from their homes, they can see all the way to Lancaster Avenue. So by providing the screening that we're providing, it is a true enhancement to the community that abuts or is adjacent to our property.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, our mission tonight is to make comments that we can pass on to the zoning hearing board for when they take a look at this appeal. We don't have to recommend approval or disapproval of it. We just have to put our comments together. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So why don't we start at one end and see where we are? Who wants to start, I should say? We do. Okay, go right ahead.
Regina and I are bothered by the same thing.
Yeah, there's
too much
a
parking.
little too much parking for our preference here. If there's any way to scale back the parking, even if maybe you did like a grass area that was reinforced and it's usable on, as overflow parking or something, it's the
Also, if
parking
you only
that's
need the
driving that
parking
impervious.
spaces 3 days a month,
Yeah, and
can't they park
it's-
someplace else?
Well, it's what's driving the impervious. So if you were able to do like a reinforced grass paver type of situation where it wasn't impervious and it could provide your parking, get creative with your overflow parking.
Yeah,
A lot of the, excuse me, isn't a lot of the parking a new deck? It's not on the ground. How many new spaces are going to be constructed higher than 20 feet? Above grade, let's put it that way.
Will you be paving any
I
grass?
think the question is, how many of the spaces that we're looking at on the ground are new?
None. All the new parking is an overbuild of the existing garage.
Okay.
I mean, the only area that's new is this, but it's a reconfiguration of the existing parking lot. So it's on top of existing impervious.
But
So that they could perhaps do something more creative with.
I mean, here's the thing. So Regina did the math. That 628 spaces that's calculated on the zoning table is actually based on the individual buildings. And according to the way Peter said they could interpret it, where they just add all the building space on the property, under that scenario, they only need 545 spaces, and they're providing almost 200 more than that. So to Kathy's point about traffic, and we've had this discussion on regarding all sorts of properties in that area where we've actually considered as a commission limiting how much parking people can provide to encourage mass transit, because haven't we been told this is all so close to the mass transit, this is going to be great. And these people are providing almost 200 spaces more than they need. I mean, again, the way Peter said it, the calculation could have been done, but even if you didn't do it that way, so we're talking about 25% more parking, 26% more parking than they need based on the aggregate way of calculating this, or 15% more than they needed based on the disaggregate. And in both cases, they're going over their impervious. So I appreciate that they're putting all on the parking deck, and that's great. In fact, if you look at their parking calculations, it's part of how they're pulling off building this building is ripping up and going on top of the parking deck. But they're also asking to go over their impervious, you know,
No, we're not.
over the required district. You're not over your existing. You're right. I appreciate. I mean, I apologize. I
But they're
misspoke.
in a preconditioned state over.
They're in a
the-
preconditioned state of over their impervious.
And as we
So-
mentioned, there is a reason for the 106 additional spaces.
Okay, Nick, we really need to have our discussion.
I'm sorry.
So
And then
that's,
we'll-
you know, that's,
Not that we want to ask you plenty of
That's fine.
questions.
that's my concern about it, is that that's a lot of extra parking and extra traffic. you
Okay,
know,
what other
to be
concerns
inferred.
do you guys have at that end of the table?
You know, I didn't think I mean, the evergreens, yeah, I'm for sure going to want them to put in an agreement that when some of those evergreens die,
Yeah.
you know, it has to be maintained
Right.
so that it's a benefit, but it could have been a nicer one.
That is neat.
Doug, do you have anything?
It's an oddball question, but what gives them the authority to put a buffer planning on township property?
Yeah, that's weird.
No, just, it's a logical question. I mean, do they have an easement or something to do that?
Peter?
At this time, I think there's 3 questions regarding that little box of township property. I think the first question, is it truly township property? I think that's basically been answered yes. Most people agree. The second question is whether or not the township wants to sell it to the applicant, and the applicant wants to buy it. The third question is whether maybe the applicant wants to lease it from the township with a long-term lease. I have been involved in discussions on this property for several months, but the last one I was involved in, which was before this board's last review of this plan, there was discussions about the applicant buying it. So it might be that the applicant is showing that because they hope to be able to buy it from the township. I don't know. That's a guess on my part. Nick would know that better. But if they don't buy it, they don't lease it, and it's the township's land,
They
They're
might
not-
have a hole in their buffer.
they're going to have a hole in their buffer, or they have to put it around, or they have to get, you know, an easement or a license from the township to put the trees on.
Okay, so there's practical ways to solve that. All right. How about this end? Anybody?
I have a question for Amy. I noticed that the applicant wants to close up, it looks like 2 driveways, and of course, we have had the discussion about the signalized intersection. Are you at a stage in your review of this to be able to say that this will enhance the flow of traffic, be neutral, or be a negative based on the fact that the parking spaces increased?
The fact that the parking spaces are increased isn't what's going to drive the fact that there are vehicles there. It's the increase in the square footage of the buildings that are on site that would drive more vehicles into the site. I don't think, if they were to do nothing with this site and they decided not to have the access come through the signal, we did look at that information, and it looks like there won't be any problems with stacking and queuing. So the improvements that we're making on the road will allow for better flow through this area, because you will no longer have to wait behind vehicles making lefts into the high school site. If he is to construct his driveway to match up with the high school driveway, that's even better, because now we've moved the left-turning vehicles out on both directions of travel. So it would be better for the motoring public with both of those accesses and like that, and eliminating the one driveway.
2 driveways.
I think it was just one driveway that is it 2? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Good.
I could go back to the parking thing again. I understand that they're accommodating mainline health, and that's a big part of the primary reason for doing this. But if even to use the point that we're only going to be using 730 spaces 3 times a month, if mainline health is not their client at some point in time, then those spaces could be used at full capacity by whomever wants to use them, and then we are reaching those full limits of traffic coming through there. So I think we just have to, I know I want to keep in mind if someone does use all that spaces every day in the morning and the evening, that we're still okay with all that.
Okay.
I'm concerned about, as I mentioned, increased traffic in the area and setting a precedent for allowing increased development and a variance for increased development, because you all know what's down the road. So I'm concerned that if we open the door a little, somebody's going to stick their foot through it. So I feel they could build a perfectly adequate building, especially if people are only visiting 2 to 3 times a month. I can't believe that they need a third of this building for people to visit 2 to 3 times a month. I think there's a way they can work around it to get the footage that they need by proper design and bring down the amount of building that they're putting in, and then possibly use that extra space to increase the green space on the property, which would also help stormwater.
Yeah.
I kind of have a different slant on it, so I don't really see it as granting a variance to create, more non-conforming uses. I see it as if all the numbers presented are correct, that they're going to limit what can be built on here, at a future date. They're not increasing the impervious coverage. And I guess I understand how the flex hours work and the fact that there's a very transient, all day long process, and it's not as concentrated as a conventional office building. So the fact that we have extra traffic, I guess I don't feel like the impact is going to be as great as, I'm less concerned about the impact as maybe some of the other challenges we've had in this neighborhood. Obviously, the lining up the driveway and the signalized interchange and the left turn lanes are going to help, mitigate that as well. So, they're my comments.
Okay, Peter, do we need to make a motion, make a motion about what our comments will be to the zoning hearing board? Is that the best way to go?
Yeah, I mean, because you want the comments from the planning commission as a whole, not the individual members.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to make a motion.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
If I could just, we did speak of it, but I just want to be very clear, from the staff standpoint, we're looking for Mr. Gross to install the mast arm, make any on-site changes required for the intersection at the appropriate time, and the accoutrements that are going to be required with that mast arm. I know we did mention it, but I just wanted to be very specific as part of the notes from staff that that's what we would look for Mr. Gross to do as part of this project.
And when you say mast arm, you mean at the turn signal, right? The traffic signal?
That is correct.
To clarify, are you starting to say that they should pay for all of it and the high school should not?
No, they should, what I'm asking is Mr. Gross to pay for all the improvements that are required on his property. So right now, we basically have 3 pieces. We have Radnor Township School District, Radnor Township, and the Gross property, all doing various different parts of this project. The township's going to get the signal up in a temporary fashion. So when Mr. Gross's project, if it goes through and gets its approvals, at that point, we would look for him to do the final steps to finish out that portion of the project.
How does that fit in with the comment I heard that Brandywine is putting some money in on that side of the street?
Brandywine, as part of 200 Radnor Chester, I believe it was 200, did provide money to the township, which we are using for the design through Gilmore and towards a portion of the construction. So then, on a separate note, we're looking for Mr. Gross to fund his portion of the construction.
So would that be a condition of the zoning relief? How does that work?
I think what the staff is looking for is if the planning commission wishes, we are suggesting that you make it a suggested condition.
Okay.
Yeah, Julie, and I'm sorry to speak, but remember.
Please, go ahead.
There was 4 things I said we would be agreement to, and one of the conditions was that
Right.
condition.
So that's no
was
issue.
Limiting the square
We're all on the same
footage.
page.
Right, okay.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to make a motion. I motion that we comment to the zoning hearing board that the applicant should be required to satisfy the staff's recommendations for improvements to the traffic signal at Radnor, what's it called? Raider Road? At Raider Road, at the intersection. Our second comment is that we are concerned that the site is overparked. They have more parking than is required, and we feel that that could lead to future increased traffic problems when perhaps a different tenant is in this building. We'd like to see, we recommend that they redesign the project to show less impervious surface than is shown now in order to be closer to what the township requires, although they have a nonconformity. And I think that I also would make a comment to the hearing board, the zoning hearing board, that the increase over the building area that's allowed, which they're already over the limit, that's already in the code, they're asking for an increase. I don't see a good reason for that. I would recommend that they not grant that because that's our zoning code, and that's the basis for this area. And you expect everyone to kind of stick to those basic numbers, and that's one of the key ones, that building area. I understand the tenant would like to have that, but that's not a good enough reason for me.
Well, just so we clarify that, I'd like to ask the applicant what impact going from 25.9 to 20, back to 20.9 has on this development.
Just, one comment, and Julie, I understand where you're coming from, but do recall that we can actually go higher with this existing building and build more square footage than what we're proposing here. As we mentioned, one of our conditions is that we would limit it to an additional 70,000. We could build another floor of 100,000 additional, or we can scrape the entire building and build 114,000 additional. But, and also, Alex, if you want to address the question.
Yeah, I mean, the main issue with the building coverage and the main reason we're saying that we're going to reduce the impervious on the site is, as Nick said, the building as it is today, this is only a 1-story portion, and this is an existing 2-story portion. This is an existing 1-story portion, and this is an existing 2-story portion. So we could put 1 level on top of here and 2 levels on top of here, but to physically do that construction, the tenant would have to move out. So all that the building coverage is doing is sliding those additions off the top of the building and putting them on top of an existing parking lot. It's not increasing the density of the property. It's not increasing the impervious coverage of the property. It's just allowing the existing tenant to maintain in the property while we do the construction, basically. So it's just displacing density that's already permitted on the site and putting it in a new location. But because of that, we're agreeing to reduce impervious coverage.
I have another question while you're standing here. So if the tenant, because we always worry what happens in the future, so if this tenant, if you don't do this deal, they move out eventually because you can't suit their needs. If you decide to scrape the site and build your full build out, then does your parking increase over what you're proposing now, or is it less than what you're proposing now?
Well, I mean, the important number isn't parking, it's square footage of buildings that can be built. And both the addition and a scrape and rebuild is more square footage in any scenario than what we're proposing with
And what are we
170 total.
So you have, so at 200,000 feet, if we're 4 per thousand, you're still going to have the same amount of parking.
Actually, would be more parking.
So you're going to, so this isn't, I mean, limiting this to the extent that if it ruins your deal, not that we want to be deal specific here, but but the point I'm trying to make is we could wind up, if they scrape the site, we could wind up with more parking than we have now. So just a consideration.
No, I agree with Steve. I mean, is everyone else comfortable with that, of not setting aside the building area? Because
First of all, I don't know that that's true. And second of all, at the end of the day, they're making a business decision that they don't want to lose their current client and scrape the building or add another floor on because they're going to lose their current tenant. That's the business decision.
But
they're making.
it's eventually, we all agree eventually this tenant's going to move out, right? Whether they put the addition on or not. I mean, tenants don't stay forever. So the real question is, when the tenant moves out, what are their rights and what can be then developed? So if we're maxed out here, our parking's maxed and our building coverage is maxed. And of course, we don't like the parking, but so if they can then develop the full site to its maximum, I know we'd have to see a plan, so it's a little bit hypothetical, but they would have the same amount of parking. So we're not solving, I guess my point is, I don't think we're solving that problem. But here we'll be maxed out here, and at least we'll be maxed out with the amount of building square footage. So this is a unique use. I think we're all in agreement. This is unique, and the drivers of the traffic for this use are unique. So if this tenant moves out, as this plan is, 90% probability is the next tenant will not use all the parking spaces. But if this tenant moves out and the site is scraped and it's built to maxed out, then there's probably a 90% chance that they will use all of the parking spaces. So this probably presents a better situation for a 50-year time horizon to limit traffic than trying to, trying to lose the deal now.
Very
in
well
my
said,
mind.
Steve.
I agree with what you said. However, I don't feel that even if they build this, that it's maxed out, because they have a two-level building and a one-level building. If that building is empty, they could still build on top of it.
They've
Kathy,
agreed
they've
to
agreed
limit.
No,
not
they've
to.
agreed not to. If they go this route, they're
Okay.
done.
There are no more buildings allowed.
No, that's an important point, that they can't then add on to the top.
I think their buy right off the cuff seems like it might be 50, if it's scraped, might be another 50,000 square feet. 215,000, I hear from the applicant, as opposed to 160, or no, 138?
170 is the total rate. It's 170,000 square feet right now. If we tore the building down and started from scratch, we can build 215,500 square feet with all of the parking to support that within the PB area. And if we decided to just build on top of the existing building, it would be an additional 100,000 square feet. So we're foregoing 30,000 square feet with 170 versus 200, and we're foregoing 45,500 square feet with 170 versus 215,000.
Let me just clarify.
Okay, you know what? We're
It was
ready to.
It's 100,000 existing. now.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to make certain that's, it's
Thank
not.
you.
And then proposal's 170. Right.
All right, I'm going to withdraw my previous motion and make a new motion. Please. Okay. I recommend that our comments to the zoning hearing board be that the applicant be required to meet the staff's recommendations for improvements to the traffic signal at Radnor Road, that there be less parking on the site than is proposed, and that there be less impervious surface on the site than is proposed in order to bring it closer to conforming with the existing code. Yeah, general. Do you want to put a number on the amount of parking?
I think just the fact that the zoning hearing board's going to consider
I just
that-
want them to consider.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's, I know
Let
that's
them
where you're
work it
going.
out, yeah. Yes, we took off the building area because we were convinced by both the applicant and Steve.
Then I'll make a second to that motion.
Before we vote on that, can we modify it slightly?
Yes.
The first statement, we just want to say that the zoning relief be conditioned upon meeting the requirements of the township with respect to the traffic intersection.
Yes.
And also with the parking, I want to identify
wanna word
that it's nearly 200 additional spaces than what is required. If some of that parking could be non-impervious surface. since it's, for flex parking.
Okay. Everybody understand the changes? Okay.
I made a second.
It's been seconded. We've all agreed to the little amendment. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One
Opposed.
opposed. Thank you. Two opposed.
I do have a question, though, for Peter.
Go ahead.
And Peter, assuming this thing all goes through, and they come back to us at some point with land development, the condition that they are agreeing to with regard to not further increasing the square footage on this property, would that extend to a future owner? Or is that something that we would have to specifically condition at the preliminary plan stage?
Well, if it's part of, if the zoning hearing board grants the request in whole or in part, and conditions that grant upon, that no further development of the property will take place, so long as they're taking advantage of that zoning hearing board decision, relying upon those variances granted, they're obligated to not do any more improvements upon the property. You could also have it added as a note on the plan that would make it even more enforceable. You could have it as a deed restriction that would make it more enforceable. Those two things are something that could be discussed during the land development process.
And that would all assume that the property doesn't someday get scraped and rebuilt, because then they would no longer need those variances.
Correct. That would be the problem with just relying upon it as a condition under the zoning hearing board decision.
Thank you. Final question, Julia, while you pull out your stuff, is that as our existing ordinances are now, parking structures are not considered part of building coverage, is that right?
They're not defined as buildings in the zoning ordinance, therefore they are not included in the calculation of building coverage.
Right. So that's one thing that, right, that's the part I was thinking, that's part of why this is out only at 20%, is that parking structure is not currently, under our existing ordinances, is not being considered a building. Thank you, Pete.
I'm sorry, this is an aside, but weren't we going to change that?
Yes, we are.
We just haven't gotten there yet?
Yeah, we haven't. I mean, it's been discussed, it's been mentioned, but we need, authorization from the Board of Commissioners to move forward, and as far as I know, that has not been given or granted.
Okay, thank you.
We need to send them a memo.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to jump into our Drawson. So if the applicant wants to set up, that would be great. Thank you, everyone. Second item on our agenda tonight, and actually the reason for this special meeting, is the preliminary plan for the Ardrossan estate. We're going to start with the applicant is going to briefly go through the proposed preliminary plan. And at that point, we will have some board discussion, and then we will go to public comment. We have a large crowd here. I'm imagining most of you will want to comment. Can I see a show of hands of anyone who knows that they want to make comments so I can figure out the timing? Great, thank you very much. We'll get to that shortly. Before the applicant begins, though, I would like to just do a review of where we are in the process. And we've lost our attorney, so.
That's where I was going to start, if you want.
You're going to go ahead and take us through that?
Yeah.
Please.
Okay.
Go right
thank
ahead.
you. I'm John Snyder from Saul Ewing, representing ES3LP, Eddie Scott, the applicant here. This property is approximately 311 acres east of Darby Paoli Road. It has gone through an application for conditional use under your density modification. While that density modification generally is used to increase density on the site, in this instance it wasn't. It was used to basically approve more clustering on the site instead of the normal 2-acre lot size in this zone. We asked for a conditional use of between 87 and 64 to 70 lots on the site. We have an agreement with the township on what is called the rye field, so this application is consistent with that, this subdivision application, so that it is 71 homes, 11 of which are existing, and 60 new homes. The open space that is shown on the plans in the zoning application, we had to show that we had the minimum required open space of 15%. In this subdivision application, we've shown the areas that are basically to be preserved and not even be considered as what were called investment lots in that application as open space, so the open space numbers are significantly higher. Our engineer will go with that. This is the preliminary land development plan, subdivision plan for those 71 lots. And our planning module is processing through it's been approved by the township, approved by RHM, approved by Springfield Township. And tomorrow night we'll be in front of Darby Creek Joint Authority, so we're progressing really well with that. We've had correspondence with your engineer and with your traffic engineer with respect to the plans that were filed. Revisions have been made, and what you have in front of you is pretty much a revised plan. There's been a new traffic count done as required from the zoning hearing, from the conditional use application, and a new study has been submitted on that, and you'll hear from the engineer. So the three people I'm going to ask to talk to explain the existing plan and where it stands with respect to the conditional use plan, our engineer, our landscape architect, and our traffic engineer. Okay. Was there anything else you wanted an update on?
No. Did anyone have anything about where we are in the process, or?
Well, yeah, actually I did.
Go ahead.
I was about to bring this over to Peter. It is my distinct recollection during the entire conditional use process and the plans that we saw prior to the conditional use process that the application was for 64 or 87 dwellings, depending on whether or not the township entered into an agreement to buy the rye field. The township entered into an agreement to buy the rye field.
Right.
So I'm curious how we got from 64 to 71.
No, it was between 64 and 71, and if you go back and look at the transcript said that depending upon how either,
Let me-
let me finish your answer. There were two parts
Yep.
of the plan that had alternate methods of development. One was Phase 3. Phase 3 was either going to be 9 lots or 25 lots. Phase 4 was either going to be big lots or little lots. Both of them, if it was big lots and 9 lots, you would get to 64. If it was big lots and little lots, you would get to 71. If it was little lots and the 25 lots, you would get to 87. So it wasn't 64 or 87. It depended on which alternate you did for Phase 4 and which alternate you did for Phase 3. So we have done the little lot alternate for Phase 4 and the fewer lots for Phase 3. And the main reason for the little lots in Phase 4 is that we lost investment ground in the Ryefield area as a result of the deal with the township. So we had to make that up by going to the little lot alternative instead of the big lot alternative in Phase 4.
I'm reading the conditional use decision.
Yep.
Number 4, where it says, in the event that the applicant or any of its successors or assigns proposes to build any additional dwellings beyond the proposed maximum limit of 64 or 87. It doesn't say 64 to 87. It says 64 or 87. And I'm just, for myself, I don't ever recall 71 being a number. So I'm just a little thrown by that tonight, that's
It's
all.
in the transcript. You can go back and read it.
Okay. I'm reading the decision.
Please continue.
I am done. I'm going to let Mr. Fiorello come up and explain the plan itself.
Thank you.
Dave Fiorello from Omni and Associates. Is there a handheld mic?
Yes. Certainly.
As John explained, our preliminary plans here tonight are, in a sense, pretty much the same as the conditional use plans that were submitted and approved. We have gone through the plans and we have identified our individual building lots. We have identified the areas in green here on this plan as open space. I think it was testified before that we needed roughly 47, give or take, acres to make the 15% minimum required. I believe with this plan we have close to 87 plus acres in open space as dedicated here in green. The areas on this plan shown in yellow are the investment lots as we speak, so that while they have been lotted out and allocated, there's no development at this time proposed on those lots. So we have broken this up into 5 phases, as was discussed as part of the conditional use, and we have identified on our phasing plan the phases and the number of lots in each.
Can you tell us what page you're on as you go along?
On page 15 of the plan set.
I would also like to just congratulate you on sending the largest plan set we've ever received in the 7 years that I've been on the Planning Commission, and I think that's quite a feat.
Wait until you see the final. On sheet 15, we have identified the phases. Color coding hopefully identifies a little bit better. The purple is the first phase, and is, again, we are making use of the existing loop.
Excuse me, one more
going through the
technical
site.
issue. Excuse me, could you just slide the plan down?
Yes, I can. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
We're making use of the existing loop road through the site. We're proposing a one-way traffic pattern into the site up to the point here where this road here pretty much follows the existing roadway. The other portion of the road is a 2-lane road to allow traffic in both directions. That allows traffic to get back into the back end of the site. We have this loop road serves pretty much all of Phase 1, and there are 16 lots in Phase 1. Phase 2 is the area in blue. We have allocated this out to show that we have 19 lots in Phase 2. There are 4 existing dwellings that we're making use of there, so that we have, while this plan shows, I noticed today as I was going through it, we're showing 14 new dwellings and 5 existing. That should be 15 new dwellings and 4 existing in here, total of 19 homes in that phase. Phase 3 is the area adjacent to the rye field. There are 9 lots associated with this. In Phase 3, there's another lot in the back here. So 10 lots total in Phase 3, all new dwellings. Phase 4 is the area in green, 21 lots in Phase 4, 18 new dwellings. There are 2 existing residences. There is a lot down here denoted as 411. The intent is to offer this lot to the adjoining property owner to be merged, and in the case that that lot owner is not interested, it would become as part of lot 410. In the time between the conditional use plans and the preliminary plan submission, we have done a wetland evaluation through the site. We have identified wetlands down in this area. So this lot essentially is not a buildable lot, but it is a lot designated nevertheless. And then in Phase 5, we have 5 lots in here, 3 existing dwellings, 2 new ones, and we have the mansion lot on a 10-acre lot set aside, which will be maintained by the trust. Again, since our conditional use hearing, we've done floodplain studies. I think we testified during the conditional use hearing that while there was identified FEMA floodplains along Darby Creek, FEMA did not designate any floodplains along the site. We have identified, we performed a floodplain analysis of the 2 streams on the site, identified the limit of the floodplain. We have identified the riparian buffers along there. As you can see, those streams are pretty much left out in the open space. The areas of the wetlands along the site, along the stream, all those, and the majority of the woodlands also have been made part of the open space for the property. We have gone through, we have laid in our roadways. We made a few minor tweaks to the alignment to comply with the ordinance requirements. We have prepared our road profiles, and one of the things, I guess, is it was discussed as part of the conditional use, and that we have identified on the plans, and it has been addressed by both engineers. We're requesting a number of waivers from the land development in order to pretty much preserve the quality of the site. We're trying to accomplish a low-density type development. We're requesting waivers for reduced right-of-way widths, reduced cartway widths, reduced cul-de-sac bulb dimensions. We're requesting the use of roadside swales in lieu of curbing in most of the site. We're not proposing any sidewalks except in the area along the Phase 2 lots where we have smaller lots, which we're identifying as the village. So we are, again, requesting a number of waivers to provide that type of development. We have prepared a stormwater management analysis of the site. On sheet 16 of your plan set, we have an overall plan set at 200 scale. We go into the 50 scale plans as we get further back, but at 200 scale, this gives us an area, an opportunity to show the whole site and show how it goes. We've identified, we are proposing individual stormwater management systems for all of the development lots. We're providing common stormwater management systems for all the new roadways. Each lot will be developed by the buyer. We're not proposing the development of the lots as part of this. We have kept the intent of providing the stormwater management on those lots for the when those lots are being developed, so that at this time we don't know the type of buildings that are going to be put on there, because they are to be done by the individual buyers and owners. We have designed stormwater management systems for all the common improvements, but we have our intent to have the individual builders and developers provide the stormwater management for those lots. Now, as part of that, we are showing stormwater management areas. We have done a lot of percolation testing throughout the site. We have worked with our testing consultants. We have done over, I believe, 60, 70 perk tests throughout the site, so we know the conditions of the soils. We are providing, let me back up and say that in the area of the Phase 2 area, the cluster, or what we call the village lots, we are providing stormwater management system for those lots, but those lots themselves would provide a recharge facility to provide the recharge requirements for those lots. So the recharge for those lots will be on those lots, but the rate control requirements, the ordinance requires a certain reduction of the rate at which the water runs off the site. That will be accomplished in the common system. So we have 14 common systems throughout the site. We've worked out configurations and designs. When we get into our final plan stage is when we get into the actual final configuration, pipe sizing, plans and profiles, inverts, elevations, and things that would be part of the final plan. But for the preliminary plan at this point, we have identified the drainage areas, the areas that we're trying to control, and have identified locations for our stormwater management systems. Generally, again, the lots are laid out pretty much the same as they were as part of the conditional use plan. As John said, we're working with the municipalities or the sewer authorities to get our planning modules approved. We're proposing public sewerage for all the lots on this property. We have our sanitary sewer layout to serve each individual lot. Our stormwater management systems, again, will be making use of the roadside swales and collection systems to tie everything together. We've worked out, again, to stay out of the wooded area. One of the things that our landscape architect has put together is a buffer plan, what we're calling a reforestation plan. And if you don't have any more questions for me, I can turn it over to Lisa Thomas with regard to the landscape.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Thomas. I'm a landscape architect for this Ardrossan project, and the firm I'm with is Glack and Thomas Panzak. We spent a lot of time discussing what we wanted to do with the landscape at Ardrossan, and our major goal is to provide a landscape that reflects the unique character of the land. And we want to do this through the preservation and framing of views and reflecting the existing vegetation through our selection of plant material. The two major components of the landscape are the street trees and the buffering, and I'd like to start with the buffering. This plan is an overall site plan of the property, and what I've done is I've highlighted in green where the landscaping is so that you can focus on that area. So let's talk about the rye field area first. That is in front of the units. What phase is that? Phase 3. So what we did was we looked at what type of landscaping wanted to be in that area that will be reflective of the existing vegetation in our Drawson. And we also worked with the Shade Tree Commission and the arborist. We met once with the Shade Tree Commission before we went in, and then we met a second time after we provided our plans, and we also met with the arborist out on the site. Our proposal is to provide a buffer of deciduous trees that are reflective of a reforestation plan. The trees will be reflective of what's out there, along with some additional trees that are around the living areas, such as some beeches and those types of trees. So the trees will be range in size from 2.5 inches to 5 feet tall, and they'll be provided in groupings adjacent to where the homes are. And then there'll be openings where there are no homes along the road. So if you start up in this area, you'll see that in front of each one of the homes, there's more clumping of trees. And where there's an open area, we have less trees. So there's a progression as you go up and down the street. You may recall that along Newtown Square is an existing hedgerow that will be preserved. And the entrance road is where an existing opening in the fence is, in the wall, excuse me. The other areas of buffering that we've looked at are towards the east end of the site, where the village backs up to Newtown Road. So we have a significant hedgerow there. We reviewed it and noted there are a number of trees that need to be removed because of their health and for safety reasons. And we looked at where these tree removals will happen and where we would interplant some evergreen trees. And the trees that would be interplanted are holly trees because of the shady conditions. At the northeastern corner of the property, we've also noted that there's some holes in the canopy, the existing deciduous canopy. So in that area, we will also provide a reforestation area. And then on the southeastern side, there's an opening, there's an existing evergreen buffer right here, a pine buffer, and there's an opening at the end of it, and we're going to plug that hole with the evergreen trees. For the street tree aspect of this, in terms of looking at the character of the land and the desire to have open view sheds, what we worked through with at the Shade Tree Commission was providing street trees as each property is developed, as each lot is developed, so we know where the houses are and what the views are going to be. One of the things we discussed was not wanting to put trees far away in the view that might block views. So that's why we want to take the street tree aspect and address it as each home goes in that manner.
So would that then be the responsibility of the homeowner to provide that? Or
No.
would that be installed prior to sale of the lots?
It would be installed as the house is being built.
Who decides?
So there's
For the
kind of
st-
an
for the st-
ongoing agreement that
Yes.
you will be involved in the planting of the trees?
Yes.
Can you clarify something? I looked at the plan, and it seems to say that the caliper or the diameter of the tree is either 2.5 inches and/or the trees are 5 feet tall.
It's
Is
a
that the-
range. They'll range. We didn't give the exact numbers, but they're a range.
Well, are any of the trees going to be taller than 5 feet? I guess
Yes,
is
the ones that are
fast way.
2.5 inch caliper. We'll give probably 3 different sizes. So the tallest would be 2.5 caliper inch, which would probably be about 15 feet. And then the smallest would be 5 feet. And then there would be probably another size in between there. So it would have more of a naturalized look for reforestation.
The 5 feet seems kind of inadequate, especially after the plan we just saw, but okay.
Mr. Kunda, if I may, our arborist, John Hotsback, has met several times with the applicant, and I was at some of the meetings, and he actually suggested using whips and smaller diameter trees in amongst the reforestation because there would be a better retention as each year went. So I know that was a little startling to me also, but he was very adamant about that and thought that would be very wise to do, and the applicant has moved forward with that thought.
And to that point, we will also be providing maintenance planning for the reforestation area as we move forward in the approvals.
Will you be working with the individual homeowners on their landscaping for their property so that it is consistent with the wonderful job you've done here for the overall?
We have homeowners association requirements, and the landscaping plans for each of the lots will be part of the approval process for the homeowners association. So
Great.
yes, we will be monitoring what they do and making sure that they do what is consistent. And the street trees that we're talking about will be part of the financial security for the development, so the money will be up to be planning them as they're needed to be planted.
I'm a little confused because I see two waivers about asking to not have to put in street trees, number 11 and 12. So
Let me explain those. There are requirements as to how many street trees, and there are requirements as to the spacing of street trees. And those are the sections that we're asking for waivers for, because we've been working with the Shade Tree Commission that there may be stretches of roads that are across the top of hills where you're not houses, where you're getting to where houses are, that you don't want to plant trees and staggered trees up and down the road to break up that view shed that's hundreds of, thousands of yards long, where you're now creating a break in it artificially. So our agreement with the Shade Tree Commission was to work with them as we go, as the houses are put in and as the roads are put in, to decide where appropriate planting of those street trees would be. But the waivers are the number and the alternate of them, the pattern.
Are you done with your initial presentation?
And we could go into the traffic report if you want that now, or do you want that in response afterwards?
No, let's do that.
Okay, thank you. Are you done?
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Greg Richardson with Traffic Planning and Design. The we have revised the traffic study, as Mr. Snyder had referred to earlier, and we have submitted that to your traffic consultant.
That was submitted very recently, correct?
Yes, it was, and she has not, to her, give her the benefit of the doubt. It was submitted on the 10th, and she hasn't had a chance to review it thoroughly. So she did produce a letter mentioning some items on the site plan, but in the letter it refers to a full review of the traffic study under separate cover. But what I wanted to do was at least touch on some of the issues that arose at the conditional use and where we are now. Essentially, the major comment that arose from the traffic study was that we had conducted our traffic counts in July. The township consultant had made comments about that. We heard it from the neighbors that this might not be the most appropriate time to do the traffic counts. And we recognize that, and we're willing to do traffic counts, but the bridge on Darby Paoli went out, and it kind of put a kibosh on that. So we agreed to, as part of the condition, is that we would do new traffic counts, do a new study, and analyze the conditions and compare them with the existing conditions with and without the site. Again, another major item was that we had more dwelling units contemplated in that traffic study as opposed to what's being proposed now, so that has changed. We have also recognized the fact that the traffic patterns again have changed in the area because the bridge is back open again. They're somewhat back to normal. We did do our traffic counts before school was out this year. So it did take into account the major contributors of the local schools.
Were the colleges also?
Colleges were in session. Episcopal was in session, and that's one we noticed had the greatest impact on our traffic volumes at the intersections that we recounted. The access points, if you're not familiar with it, what we have is 6 driveways out on Newtown Road and 5 out on Darby Paoli. The 5 that are on Darby Paoli are all existing driveways. There are 4 existing driveways on Newtown Road, and we're proposing 2 new driveways. The first driveway would be the what I'll call the eastern driveway that would serve, western, that would serve Phase 3. the 10 homes that are there. And then the easternmost driveway, which is approximately 400 feet from this roadway here and about 1,000 feet from Abraham's Lane. That would serve the 19 lots in the first phase. Or is that right? First phase? First and second phase. Other than that, we did do the analyses that showed that the site, again, would generate roughly 60 trips during the peak hours. That's a 1 hour period in the morning, 1 hour in the morning, roughly one new vehicle to the roadway system every minute. Then we analyzed the key intersections, namely along Conestoga, as well as Darby, Paoli, and Newtown, Brook, and Darby, Paoli, Sawmill, Godfrey, Abrams, because we're lining up with Abrams Lane, as well as the three, I'll call it the triangle intersection of Radnor, Chester, Conestoga, and Newtown. Based on our findings of the study of the analysis of the new traffic counts, we found that with the exception of some levels of service that degraded from the previous study to this study, we show that this site, with the number of trips that it's generating, would not have a significant impact on the delays in levels of service. Again, those are measurements that we are required to provide as part of any traffic study, and will be submitted to PennDOT, and will be, because it is access is onto two PennDOT roadways, we will have to get new highway occupancy permits for the two driveways and satisfy PennDOT's criteria there. But the bottom line is we believe we satisfy PennDOT's requirements for of not increasing our levels of service and delays past the point where we are required to provide any mitigation at this point. So unless the Planning Commission has any particular questions.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hang on. I want to just check with you all. Once we start our discussion and we talk to our staff about their various memos and things, that's going to be a very long discussion, I imagine. I do want to make sure we hear from absolutely everybody who wants to speak tonight from the public. So would you be comfortable if we went to public comment before we did our staff review? Is everyone comfortable with that? Yep. Okay, so we're going to go to public comment and then come back to this.
Can I ask one quick question before? Sure. Did you consider the internal traffic, or you just considered you yourself? Were you part of that?
We did consult with Ms. Fiorello, but that's more of a on-site issues and we did talk to him about turning radii and things like that. But for the most part, Dave would be the best person to answer those questions.
And I just wanted to clarify one thing that was said, and that is, in the prior report, we assumed 87 homes on this site. We didn't take any credit for the existing 11 homes, and we assumed the maximum number of homes. So that this site, this report is assuming 71 homes, 11 of which are existing, 60 of which are new. So when he said we've adjusted the study to reflect the difference in numbers, that's the difference, 87 in essence to 60 with respect to new homes.
Okay, thank you.
Are all 11 currently occupied?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to go to public comment now. We have a large group, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep to what they call the soft 3-minute rule. Try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. We're not going to shoot you or anything, but we're going to try. If you're speaking for a group, if you're representing a group of people, and we understand, and you're welcome to take more time if you need to. Also, when you come up, Sue, is there a paper? In order to help Sue, who keeps us running smoothly, everyone from the public who comes up, please write your name, and you need the address. What else do you need on there? Just the name? Name and address, please, on this paper.
Do you have a pen? So,
we'll work it out. Thank you. Come on up.
Good evening, Chairwoman, Chairperson, members of the board. My name is Tim Boylan. I reside at 278 Hothorpe Lane in Radnor. Hothorpe Lane intersects Newtown Road directly across the street from the applicant's proposed development. I'm a member of the Radnor Taxpayers Association, and I'm also a member of the Radnor Conservancy, and I've lived in the township for the past 25 years. I ask for your indulgence for my lengthy comments, and I've made a copy of my comments and delivered them to you before the meeting, for the record. I appreciate the opportunity to express not only my personal thoughts, but those of the Radnor Taxpayer Association, whose members regarding this proposed long-term 5-phase construction site. The Radnor Taxpayers Association is 180 residents strong. It was formed as a community voice for the neighboring homeowners as the applicant pursues his intent to develop the balance of the Ardrazin farm. With your permission, I'd like to present just an illustrated overhead to let you know who the Radnor Taxpayers Association are and how they, can we zoom down to that? Thank you.
Upside down.
Well, all depends on whether you're north, south, north. Okay. Just for the record, this is Newtown Road, this is Darby Paoli Road, and this is the site in question. All of those areas that are in red there are residences that are part of the Radnor Taxpayers Association, just so you have a breadth of who we are, where we are, and our location to the applicant's property. Just leave that there. As you're aware, this development is also adjacent to the Ryfield and the other open space initiatives that the township is willing to spend $10 million for that property. I cannot emphasize strong enough that the Ardrazin site is the largest planned residential community development in Radnor Township's modern history. The impact from this development will adversely affect every resident in and around the township for years to come. It will also have its benefits, but it's going to have a lot of adverse effect. We have noticed the absence of township planning professional to speak to the developer's design. I don't think there's one over there. I didn't hear your comments, but I understand that that person is in service and no longer available to talk to us. Kevin?
Yes, Kevin's serving.
He's in service. We're concerned about this township professional not being here and is not fully engaged in the planning process for the benefit of the resident taxpayers. We are also concerned about the approval process before you may be prejudiced before it begins. The open space agreement of sale is contingent upon the approval of this application. The Board of Commissioners tried to bifurcate this, but we still believe that it's a conflict of interest between the two issues, and it's real and at odds with the best interests of the neighbors' residences. A partial list of the issues that has been brought to my attention by the Radnor Taxpayers Association deals with 9 major concerns: traffic, infrastructure and road circulation, buffering, historic preservation, stormwater management, developments, subdivision, homeowners association, construction activities once the approval is granted, and the developer's off-site improvements, and also procedural timeframes and public meetings. I'll start with traffic. Traffic is a predominant concern of the Radnor Taxpayers Association. The revised traffic study is now been received, we understand, and we're looking forward to hear what the traffic engineer concludes from the technical report. With the increase of traffic to Newtown Road, the Radnor Taxpayers Association feels the development still poses a threat to public safety and compounds the issue with the unusually large number of proposed access roads and driveways on the Newtown Road and Darby-Paoli Road. These are both state highways. The public's anticipated use of the new open space for recreation will add to an already congested situation, and we question whether or not those figures were added into the study when it was performed. From the infrastructure and road circulation, the proposed roadway circulation design calls for 2 new dedicated access roads to the site on Newtown Road. Here and here. And this is in addition to 2 existing access roads and 2 existing driveways. Both new dedicated roads will have no circulation to the rest of the development. One here and here. These are both dead ends. One dedicated new access road is planned for Darby-Paoli Road in Phase 5, which also has no public connection to the rest of the development. In addition, multiple driveways are planned. This unique development project is purported to be a high-profile planned residential community. In our opinion, the design plan for this 300-acre development lacks integration. It should be integrated so that all the proposed residential uses throughout are interconnected and internal to the project space. Instead, the proposed design presented by the developer uses Newtown Road, a state highway, as the exclusive common interconnecting roadway for traffic circulation on this private development. The potential for adaptation of existing roads and tracks throughout the estate, allowing access from Campwood Road, Godfrey Road, Darby-Paoli Road, have not been addressed, or at least not shown on the plans. There appears to be numerous potential points of access on Darby-Paoli Road. With some additional engineering, would give a safer and more direct access to the development as a whole, and lessen the burden of the traffic on Newtown Road. This is a perfect example where the input from an independent township planning professional, in conjunction with our township traffic engineer, could advise the planning board and the Board of Commissioners on development, roadway circulation issues, and the improvement of the existing traffic problems on Newtown Road and Darby-Paoli roads. Buffering design has been proposed to the Shade Tree Commission, and that application was approved at the end of May and is a continuing work in process. We're told that no major trees will be coming down, but I can't see that happening with the addition of new roads through treed areas, such as the one easternmost part of Newtown Road. The future residential units proposed along the rye field above the township's open space view shed are slated to have deciduous plantings which will eventually, after many years of growth, buffer the houses from views below. Additional buffers of evergreens are proposed for the space behind the stone wall along Newtown Road, east of Abrams and Hothorpe Lanes. All adjacent neighbors to this site are extremely concerned about the loss of their own long-standing view sheds and the proximity infringement of new construction. Additional buffering, woodland conservation easements, and other lot realignment options need to be addressed by the developer as part of this application approval in order to avoid encroachment on existing homeowners' health and welfare. Furthermore, it's not been made clear to the public nor indicated in the approved plans how many of the existing heritage tree growths will be retained, if any. Heritage trees will be the casualties of this development, as they were with the Atterbury Estate next to the Quaker Meeting House just down the road at the east end of Newtown. Historic preservation. The RTA requests the Radnor Township and developer take action prior to approvals to preserve the existing Native American artifacts, pre-Revolutionary War history, and many of the historic buildings presently on this property, some of which have been on a list have long been on the list of the Radnor Township's historic asset inventory. Number 5, stormwater management. The existing stormwater runoff from Ardrossan's Newtown Road frontage currently flows into the neighbors' residents' properties, causing excessive volumes to transverse their properties. This development should be a welcome opportunity for the board to address this issue. Stormwater management for the entire site is a major environmental impact issue that the Radnor Taxpayers Association, with the Taxpayers Association, as many parts of the development are considerably higher than the surrounding terrain and therefore affect the residents in every direction. The RTA, we'll refer to Radnor's Taxpayers Association, so I don't get tongue-tied. The RTA needs clarification and assurances that the developer's plans manage the subdivision's master plan through the development's homeowners association to maintain common areas, open space, roadways, and perimeter stone walls, the water tower, the Iddings Spring House, and other resources listed in the HIA are maintained. Construction activities. The RTA neighbors need the cooperation from the developer and assurances from the township that it will enforce the existing codes that set daily start and quitting hours for construction, limit noise levels, mitigate environmental roadway dust, dirt, mud, vibrations. And the neighbors are concerned that the statutes and the ordinances that are on the books have no significant enforcement penalties for failure to adhere. It's a major concern of ours going further as we get into multi-phase construction that's going to last for 5 years, maybe 10, who knows. The developer's off-site improvements. We have no idea what contribution that the developer plans to make and would like to hear that from them as they make their presentation. The Radnor Taxpayers Association has asked Robert Zankowski, the township manager, if his office could help us and explain this process for the subdivision and site plan approval. Since we're not land planners and we're not lawyers, we are a little bit left in the dark as to how to approach you, share our opinions, and how do we make our voice heard to you in a layman's term. He said that he would help, and we welcome that assistance. I have one other question that since I've heard this, there's 15 places where the developer wishes to make a change, the variances to, and they all have to do with this roadway circulation system, be it trees, be it curbs, be it lights, be it everything else with regards to dead ends, around the, turnarounds, et cetera, et cetera. If the entire development had a circulation pattern so that that planned community worked within itself and not use the state highway as their circulation program, which already has a traffic issue, we would be much better off and the township would be much better off. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Good evening. My name is Gerald Rohr. I live at 761 Newtown Road, and we show on this chart here is this set of properties, so that you can see I'm a neighbor to this development. My major concern about this development is that its complexity. It is an extremely complex situation which will take a couple of years at least, maybe up to 10 or 15 to complete. And it's difficult to know what the economic consequences of this are going to be. I am concerned that Radnor taxpayers are going to feel the consequences of this if it is not properly laid out and properly prepared for. And I'm going to address the traffic study as one major concern as a result of this. If any of these people planning this development lived in Radnor Township, they would know that while it is very appropriate to follow the Department of Transportation's requirements for counting traffic at various points, they would also know that the major traffic problem in Radnor Township is the intersection of Conestoga and 320. And if 320, that intersection controls the traffic on Newtown Road, it controls the traffic on Conestoga Road, it controls the traffic on Darby-Paoli Road to some extent, and certainly on the roads which cross over towards the Radnor Inn and Lancaster Pike. I would really feel a lot more comfortable if there was some count of traffic on those roads. Those of us who travel down those roads know that while 1 hour is probably the prime time, the traffic spills over for an hour or so beyond those times that they've used to count. And it is not unusual to find traffic backed up for close to half a mile on Newtown Road trying to get down and across, access either Conestoga, Spring Mill, or Darby-Paoli, or Radnor Chester as well. Excuse me, I should add that in. So those are my two comments. I think that we have to be mindful that we all knew that this property was at one point going to be developed, and we're just hopeful that the changes that are made with the conditional use plan are not going to adversely impact what we might have expected had it been developed as originally planned. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. Don't be shy, people.
Part.
Good evening. Do you want to get that? Leslie Morgan, 12 Farm Road. Good evening, Board. I just have 3 quick comments. I'm glad the project's moving forward because I think when something is so emotional for a township, the better, as soon as we can get it over with, then we'll get used to the new. But one of the things that I couldn't see from back in the corner, and because it's so small and it's such a large development, is on the stormwater page, if any of the stormwater plans were within the open space. I know that under density modification, that's a really big hot button. I know that the development behind me, they almost went to court because the Board of Commissioners was so strong-minded, and I think you all were too, that there is no way you can put stormwater within the open space and then count the open space. So I couldn't tell. I'm sure Dave knows this. I'm just mentioning that. The landscape plan is something that is I think, needs to be addressed, especially on the rye field, because there is no doubt in my mind, factually, and with township money that you all spent with Gilmore Associates to make sure that that buffering was going to be so dense, because the purchase of the land for open space by the taxpayers of this community was for the commuters that go along Darby-Paoli and Newtown, so that we tried to maintain no houses on that ridge. And the way that we were going to accomplish that, per your own outsourcing to Gilmore Associates and paying Gilmore, they even had, trajectory. I know, Julia, you were involved in that it was going to have to be so dense and with large trees, because it could take a lifetime if we didn't do it that way. There was no open spaces, because I understand from a development point of view that would benefit the residents of the new development, but we as taxpayers were paying for the open space. So there was going to be a bit of there was this tug of war, but it was decided, as I remember factually through conditional use, and what we were shown was this heavy conifers, I recall, and they were going to be big ones, because nobody was going to see except maybe a few roofs on the far end. And that was something that was very, very passionate with the board and you guys and the residents. People in this community did not want to see the houses. And that was very loud and clear, even though they knew the houses could be developed. And that's why some of the passion was, yeah, we'll put the money there, but we don't want to see the houses. And you all know that. And Julia, you know that because you've walked it and you were doing the trajectories. And we paid for the Gilmore engineering to prove that we were maybe only going to see rooftops. So I'm a little shocked with the spaces and then the open thing, and so that, you know, I don't remember that at all that way. And then the last thing is that you all know that the township is now paying for a trails and rail study, or a trail and bike study. And I think it would be really nice, you know, the Rye Field, we're spending all this money, we're going to put some trails in, and I know there's going to be sidewalks on the other side. But if we couldn't think through the conditional use as a way to continue the trail or sidewalks on the other side, so that you have a, I know, Susan, you wanted the walkability because you're living near there and you wanted more walkability. I would think that, oh, here we go. I believe our trail is going to be like this, and then we're going to have sidewalks down here. If we could have the trail continue, bike for the bikes, because on the other side it's going to be sidewalks. And I think that, you know, some of the handicapped people in this community, we're really looking forward. They're not going to be on the trails, but maybe the bikers could be on the other side. I'm just saying that because I know it's a very current thing that we're spending money, I think $60,000 for a study. And it seems that, you know, like any subdivision, we ask them to do sidewalks and this and that. You can't do it on Newtown because the stone wall's there and it's beautiful and there's just not enough room. But it seems like maybe a trail extension would be a great idea. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leslie.
Good evening. I'm Colleen Price. Honestly, I think you don't have a lot of people coming up here because this.
Colleen,
this
write your name down.
It's
For Susan. Thank you.
so massive. It's hard to even formalize some, you know, pointed questions for 3 minutes. I think my initial take is when I looked at the landscaping plan, it was so incredibly minimal. I thought the whole point of buying the land from the township was so we wouldn't see the houses by the Rye Field. And I think also all along Newtown Road, that cluster of homes that went in there, I understand that there was a deal here to buy the Rye Field, but what a slap in the face to the people on Hothorpe who expected 2-acre zoning across the street from them. They got 3/4 acre zoning and houses that you can see. That buffering should be so dense that they don't have to look at that because they really got sacrificed in this whole idea here to save the Rye Field. And when I just look at the landscaping they showed, you could barely see the green. It should run along all the developments, back by Atterbury and really, really thick all down Newtown Road. Because if you did that, it might still look like the land that we did preserve, we spent $11 million on. And this whole plan, they gave you the minimum on everything. They gave you 15% of the minimum open space. Brook Farm, you got 40%. Every other development gave 30, 40% for open space. They gave you the least amount. They've given you the least amount of buffering. They've asked for the tightest roads with no turnaround, no cartway, 4 houses on 1 driveway. It's the cheapest development plan that I've seen, and it just doesn't work. You can't have 4 houses on 1 driveway. You can't send my 16-year-old to pick up, you know, somebody else's 16-year-old to go down this driveway with 4 houses. I've done it, and it's frightening. Our rules should be enforced. They shouldn't get any waivers unless they want to start giving more than what they gave initially here, because you've gotten just the bare minimum all the way across here. And then the parking, I think they're saying it's about 50 more trips a day for 71 houses. Now, I live on Atterbury. We've got 4 cars, and we have 3 of us who leave at peak times. So if you're adding 70 houses, it's not 50 trips at peak time. It's going to be, I would say, at least double that. A lot of the people who go to school here, these kids are going to more of the private schools than where I used to live. So not only is Dad going to work, Mom's driving the kid to, you know, Episcopal and Agnes Irwin. So I think that count of how many new cars are going to go out on the road is extremely low. I mean, just for me alone, it should be, if he said it was 60, it should be 180, because we have 3 of us leaving at that time. And I can just tell you, you know, anecdotally, I come out of Atterbury to make a left in the morning. You can't make a left in the morning. You wait till 12 cars come on one side and 7 on the other, and then you cross your fingers and go. The traffic there is really bad. And maybe they didn't start the fire, but they are the straw that's going to break the camel's back over there. You really need to look at making some significant changes there, whether it's stop signs or traffic lights or taking some routes out on another road, because it's really, really jammed up already. Thank you.
Thank you, Colleen.
Good evening, and thank you, by the way, Planning Commission, for having this meeting this evening. My name is Chet Harrington. I live at 757 Newtown Road. I've lived there for 44 years, and it's adjacent to the Drawson properties, and we live in this area here. And you can see by the red marks there that the people who are closest to the Drawson involvement are probably the ones who are most unhappy with the way that the plan has evolved. Particularly, I'm disturbed about the cluster homes, as they are called, along here. It doesn't seem to be the kind of place that Radnor really was or should be, because it's condensed housing, so to speak. I just don't like the looks of it for the township. And by the way, the property is very historic, as it was an outpost of George Washington's army in 1776. And so there's a lot of history here, and there's a lot of upset on the Radnor Taxpayers Association. Tim Boylan has done a very good job, I think, of telling the story about how we feel as Radnor taxpayers. And so we want you to know we're not happy with it, and we think that there is more work to be done, particularly in the area of the traffic study. We think we need more time to study that traffic study, and we need to have an outside person look at it in addition to the township and PennDOT. The other thing is, we question what's going to happen to the mansion. We keep talking about the focal point of the whole estate is the beautiful mansion that was built many years ago, but is there anything that would ever say that that would remain as it is now, or could it be a bed and breakfast, a hotel? We need some assurances that that would be held for the future as a beautiful estate, as it is. And we just hope that there'll be some agreement between the developer and the township on maintaining that property as a residence, not as a commercial property. So I hope we get that assurance. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chet.
I just want to focus on one issue, and
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Charlie Pilkington. I live in Parks Run Lane.
Thank you.
Right off Church and Abrams. You know, development's going to happen, and I think we're all, we're inevitable it's going to happen. But the one thing that I think the township really needs to focus on, along with the traffic study people, is the traffic impact. I mean, the amount of traffic that is going to flow out of this development onto Newtown Road, 320, Conestoga, and Church, on top of the traffic that's already happened over the last, I don't know when Episcopal was developed, but call it like 6 years ago. I've lived here 18, 20 years. The amount of traffic throughout this township is out of control. I mean, it's not the township's fault. It's the rampant development we've seen, whether it's commercial or residential. And I really think the speed limit on Newtown Road is never enforced. I can't even run along there anymore without getting hit. I have been hit. I've been close to being hit 3 or 4 times. I mean, what is the speed limit? 35 miles an hour? 40? Yeah, people go 60 down there. And I think we can all be attest to that. I'm not here to squash this development. I think it's going to be a wonderful development. But as we go through all the elements of this development, we should really keep the traffic impact in mind. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Is there any other public comment?
My name is Joan Capuzzi. I live on Amherst Circle. And I think this plan is not as bad as it could be. I don't think it's as good as it can be for residents. I think that, I don't begrudge the owners the right to liquidate their property, but I think if you could have for instance, if you can make residents happier by having fewer houses, fewer properties, and larger properties to preserve aesthetics and to minimize traffic, I think that would be better. And I think it's probably easier to sell 35 3-acre properties, for instance, than 71 or whatever, 1.5 or 1.25 acre properties, and it's better for the residents. I'm in the thick of things, driving kids to school, driving to work. It's a nightmare on the roads. It's an absolute nightmare. And if you have 71 more homes, you have 150 more drivers, and throw in a bunch of teenagers who don't know how to drive, and it really is going to make things miserable for people. And if you can decrease misery and make as much money on these properties, I don't know why this isn't being addressed. And I like what you said, that the planned homes are going to go with the natural landscape, and I think that seems to be well reflected in this. But I do think the lots could be bigger and that there could be fewer homes. I think that's better for everybody.
Thank you, Joan.
Sign in.
Oh, is the sheet gone? All right. Who walked off with the sheet? Joan, here. Just take that back. Put it on the
Sign in there.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Could I make a comment for somebody that was here that had to leave?
Yes.
Okay. Bill and Barbara Duber, okay, they live on Newtown Road. Their home is right here. Okay, it's their private residence. They've lived there over 45 years, and all of a sudden now they're looking at a two-ended cul-de-sac with 16 or 19 homes is going to dump out into the road right in front of their driveway. So during the morning rush hour and evening rush hour, and any evening traffic that comes in and out of that development is going to be putting their traffic lights right into their second floor window into their master suite. Trees, walls notwithstanding. I think it's just a major travesty for them to have to endure this after 45 years of looking at a beautiful stone wall and a water tower right across the street from them. So she wanted me to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody else? Okay, thank you all very much. Okay, now I'd like to go to, we've all received this memos from Roger, and I'm going to ask Roger to take us through the points, the outstanding points that he still thinks are significant. There are 2 memos in your packet, so tell me if I'm wrong, Roger, but I understand that the first memo you had written to the applicant in response to their application, and then they've already made some of the minor changes and taken care of some of the issues. And then there's another memo, a second memo, is kind of where we are now.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that's correct. Well, I had met with the applicants several times during this review process and issued them an initial preliminary review letter to try to take care of some of the minor issues and the dimensional issues and things that generally come up on any land development plan. I also asked the applicant's engineer, which he did, there's a letter in your packet where he responded to all of my comments in my preliminary letter of how they were going to address them. Most of the issues were final plan comments, actually, where there were specifics about the utilities and some of the stormwater systems. The biggest thing I think that's before this board tonight is the consideration of the waivers that they spoke about. And they're probably, I've listed them throughout my letter, but probably the easiest place to find them is within the application itself, where they're all listed on one page. And as you go through those, like the applicant had stated earlier tonight, that they're basically dimensional issues that have to do with the roads, the width of the roads, whether or not curbs or sidewalks would be required. They discuss the street trees. So that's basically what most of the waivers are. The other items in my review letter will certainly work themselves out. They're technical issues that refer to specific sections in the code that they have to meet, and they're technical issues that will work themselves out through the final plan process. What this board should consider is whether you choose to give a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners concerning these waivers that are being requested. That's the big discussion, I believe, in front of you.
And I had a question, Roger, about obviously a lot of the comments and a lot of the plans that we have to do with stormwater. Since we're in the preliminary plan stage, what's the best approach for us? I don't know if I haven't asked yet who has comments about that, but I would think that that's an ongoing discussion between you and the applicant to make sure that they're making the appropriate decisions regarding stormwater and putting in the correct designs. Is that something that happens at the final plan more? That's what I thought.
That is a final plan requirement, but we've worked through a lot of the issues so far at the preliminary stage. And as the applicant stated earlier tonight, they're putting systems in place that will address the stormwater that comes off of the roads. Each individual lot will be addressed as that lot is sold and comes in for the building permits and the grading permits. And they will, each individual lot, for lack of a better term, will basically be a net zero or better release of stormwater based on the current codes that are in place. So what the applicant has shown is all these stormwater areas for the common areas that are being addressed now and will be finalized in the final plan stage, along with the other utilities.
Okay, so I know it's an ongoing process. I just wanted to check in with you kind of and say, are you at this point satisfied with the process and where they are, and where you are?
So far, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Roger, just back to the individual lots, is there every reason to believe that we're not going to have 71 or 60 variances for stormwater on individual lots? I mean, is it anticipated for your review that the individual lots will be able to handle the stormwater on site?
So far it is, yeah. And during that grading permit process, they'll have to prove again that those lots can handle.
Oh, so they're going to prove it to us?
Yes.
Okay,
and,
fine.
Through what the applicant indicated earlier with the perk testing, and that's also a condition of when you file a grading permit. You also submit perk testing for the
But that's when the individual owner files a grading permit,
That's
correct?
correct, yes.
Yeah, I guess the point, suppose, do we know that the individuals, when they come time to file the grading permit, it's going to perk and everything's going to work out okay? Has anything been done so that we know that now?
Well, they've done a number of perk tests already all over the site, and there's been no indication that they've had any problems.
Okay.
Is it possible that they would have an issue on an individual lot? Yes, it's possible, but all indications are that it seems like it'll be, for the most part, okay.
I have a question for either you, Roger, or Peter, or both. Peter. In terms of the fact that this application is not going to be taken through development and individual properties will be built from time to time, et cetera, will the application for the building permits come under the new stormwater ordinance as opposed to, quote, the existing stormwater ordinances?
That would depend on when the new stormwater ordinance happens.
But I mean, hypothetically, this is 5 phases, this is years out. Are you saying, or should we rely on the idea that a year and a half from now, let's say, hopefully, someone comes in for their grading permits, et cetera, this will be under the new ordinance, if that's in place?
In other words, are all the lots under this ordinance now, or are they as they go along?
The grading permit should be issued at the time of application under the current stormwater ordinance in place at the time.
Yeah, that's what exactly. So,
I just wanted
Peter,
to
you
know.
get the question, right?
Yeah, no, I'm just, I
You're
wanted
mulling
to talk with Roger. I think generally, if I heard correctly, I do believe that they would have to fall under the new stormwater, because this is a subdivision that's not proposing any stormwater improvements because they don't know the size of the homes that are being built. But I would have to look more carefully at exactly what's being proposed on the plans before I'm 100% sure. But at this time, I would generally say if someone came in with a plan to build a house on one of these lots after the stormwater ordinance had been amended, they'd have to comply with the amendment and not with what's currently in place now.
So the applicant has 11 common stormwater areas. Are they only for infrastructure, or are they overflow, or what are they?
For the most part, they're for the roads and the improvements of the roads. They're not for the individual lots. I believe, Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's 2 spots where overflows from where the lots would be flow into one of the common systems.
Yes, our common systems are basically designed for the infrastructure as shown. I had mentioned earlier that the Phase 2, the 3/4 acre lots, the stormwater system that is shown on the plan is designed for, I believe we allocated 6,000 square feet of impervious cover. I'd have to double check the numbers per those lots. So generally, Phase 2 is being handled by a system that's being designed now.
6,000 square feet, you mean of?
Of impervious cover.
Okay. But you've sized those common systems based on getting all the various waivers for street width and right-of-way and
Yes.
cul-de-sac? Okay.
Susan, that's why they're not at final design for all
Right.
those systems yet, because
No, I
if that,
appreciate
if
that.
that would not be granted, then there would be a lot of additional work to be done. So that's why that's part of a final plan.
Right, thank you.
Okay, can we go on to traffic for a moment?
Wait, before we go there, Roger, can you address the concern that was brought up earlier about the location of stormwater basins within open space? Have you looked at that? Dedicated open space, is any of that being?
Yeah, I believe there's none in the dedicated open space. Dave, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I believe, Roger, most of our systems is in the open space.
It is in the open space.
Yes.
That's why I mentioned at the very start that there's a 15% minimum open space requirement under zoning. That's 47 acres. There are areas of this site that are not suitable for development, that will have things like stormwater management on them, that are not being put in investment lots. It's an additional 40 acres of ground above and beyond what the required open space was. So none of the stormwater management, none of the infrastructure is in the required open space. Those areas will be owned by the Conservancy or the Homeowners Association, and therefore they are not building lots, they're not investment parcels, they're open space, but they are not part of
just
the
to repeat,
required open space.
The required open space, the 15% does not include stormwater
That's
basins
correct.
or anything else.
That's
However,
correct.
other areas that have been identified as future open space but are not part of that 15%, some of that will have the stormwater.
That's correct.
So identified open space or required open space, is it shown on the plan that was approved during the conditional use hearing as
The areas-
outside the open space?
The areas that were shown as open space in the conditional use hearing are true open space. They don't have any of these things. The other areas were added because they weren't appropriate to put in investment parcels.
Where's
So to
the,
clear-
where's the table, the overall table for the property? On which
What,
page?
Page 11 or something like that? 15? Yeah.
15? No.
On the phasing
it's not
plan,
on
it
15.
shows the open space for each phase.
I'm looking for the overall one, because if I'm understanding you correctly, and you've provided an additional 40 acres of open space above what was required, then the
Table will show that.
that's right, that's what I'm looking
And
for.
it does, and that's what he will.
Yep, that's the page I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So there are 87 acres of open space, dedicated open space, not investment property.
That's correct.
but absolute.
What is it,
open space.
84.2?
So
84.7 acres.
Peter and Roger, this question came up, and I know somebody in public comment did make it, and it was a sticking point at a previous application in terms of using the dedicated open space for stormwater. But what about, is there a prohibition from using open space for stormwater management? I understand the distinction with regard to the required open space, and I know that's absolutely not allowed. But what about putting stormwater management in open space areas?
I'd have to look, but then all they'd have to do is just not call them open space areas. I mean, you got to put the stormwater somewhere. It's going to, stormwater is going to go either on an individual residential lot or it's going to go on its own lot. If you want to call that own lot open space, that's fine, or you can call it stormwater space.
So who's, would that be the HOA?
Yes, the HOA will own it, or it will go to the conservancy, but be managed by the homeowners association.
So I didn't catch the page number if he
So I
said it.
guess that's the difference, is that if it's on open space, it can be part of the conservancy.
No.
Versus.
Open space is just a term they've applied to this land, and I think that's what's confusing here. They have the only required open space, i.e. there's a definition of what it is, that's the 15%. That's not allowed to have any stormwater facilities on it. That's what they're required to do in order to comply with the density modification. Now, they have another 40-some-odd acres that contains stormwater facilities. They're calling it open space, but they can call it whatever they want. They can just call it, a common element of the association. They can call it recreation space. They can call it stormwater facilities. It's just, it's just extra land that's not open space and is not residential lots.
Some of it's stream valley, some of it's woods. Only a small portion of it has these common facilities on it. It's not 40 acres of common facility.
Will there be a permanent covenant that you will not develop those acres?
Yeah, those acres are not shown as developable. They're open space. They're going to go to the homeowners association and then eventually to a conservancy.
Okay, thank you. Good? Okay. I'd like to jump into traffic. I know that the study that was done was completed, but was only received recently by the township. And obviously, the traffic issues are very much on the minds of the residents and the people who offered public participation tonight. So could you just sort of give us the update, Amy, on where you are with that?
I just did a brief overview of it and just looked for some information. One of the things I did want to clarify was that the morning peak hour counts were done, I believe it was on May 13th at Darby Paley and Sawmill Road and Newtown Road and Abrams Lane on May 13th. And Villanova, Eastern, and Cabrini were all out of school at that point. The report did talk about was they verified that the traffic counts were adequate on either side of that based on the other intersections they connect to, because all those intersections were internal. And I believe that they are consistent with the other counts that were going on, so it's likely we would accept those. I'll have to look at it a little bit more closely to make a final determination on it. One of the other things, we reviewed the crash record. There's a couple of items that I just want to look into a little more closely. I can't recall. I think it was Conestoga and Radnor Chester Road was one of the intersections, and possibly Newtown Road and Radnor Chester Road. I think those were the two intersections I wanted to look at a little bit more closely. And the other thing that I wanted to at least bring to your attention is that, in my opinion, the waivers, there's such a significant number of waivers for the internal roadways that I would recommend and that they retain those as private roads, because that would eliminate the need to meet those requirements. Actually, I may be wrong on that, because I think Roger's, okay. Okay. The one thing that I'd be concerned about is if all those waivers were approved in a few years, you're going to have residents coming in there, and I get the calls all the time about traffic calming, because When you start getting over 700 and 800 feet long on a straight roadway, you get motorists that start exceeding the speed limit, and we have no pedestrian facilities in there. We have narrow roadways, so there's not going to be a whole lot of area for pedestrians to be walking internally. You're going to have students that are going to be needing to pick up buses out at the main roadways, and I really think that in the future there's going to be some problems, and that the residents that come in here and purchase these properties are going to be concerned about that, and they're going to want traffic calming, or there's going to be some kind of complaints in the future on it. That's what I foresee.
What do you think about how dangerous it might be for them to be pulling out on Newtown Road during some of these peak hours? Because obviously the residents are having a hard time getting out of their driveways and roads. What's your take on adding just even this volume? How's it going to be safe for anybody to pull out with a wall on both sides and all these new buffering and trees?
Well, I not specifically speaking about each of the driveways that were analyzed, but I know that in the traffic analysis, I did look at that in a limited manner, and there were some walls that were considered to be taken down, and I haven't looked into it to see if those are the walls that somebody had suggested that we maintain and keep in, but I would be concerned about that. There was also discussion about vegetation being removed. So there are some things that are going to need to be done in order for them to have the sight distance available. Obviously, when this goes through the HOP permitting with PennDOT, that's going to be an issue that's going to have to be resolved. There may be a situation where PennDOT's going to require them to take down those walls if they don't think that they can get the adequate sight distance coming out of the site. You know, as it exists right now, you maybe have a couple vehicles coming out, but when you start talking at upwards of 80 vehicles coming out, now there's more concern, because each time you do it, you know, the opportunity to be hit becomes greater. So,
Amy, I look forward to hearing your traffic report, but if I understand Mr. Richardson, nothing that he feels that he sent you indicated that things are going to fail to a point where traffic mitigation is going to be required from the applicant. If your assessment of his report matches that, then that's what I imagine you'll say. So I guess my request to you would be, as you read the report, there may be things that could be required but probably won't be, but are there things they could do to help? And that's going to be some of what I guess I would ask you, and that's both out on Newtown Road. You know, and I have heard many of the residents say that that's, a large number of entrances, egress and ingress onto Newtown Road, and I agree with them, but I also know the topography of Darby Paley Road, and that's no picnic. The sight lines along that stretch of Darby Paley Road are significantly challenging. I understand why they've stayed away from it. But it does put all the burden out on Newtown Road, even if you were to figure out a way to go through Camp Woods. Eventually you have to, or Atterbury, you have to make your way to Newtown Road. So that's the external stuff. If there are things that they could do, in consideration for some of these waivers. But then internally, I'm looking for the page. I know they've asked for waivers on things like the road width and the road length and the cul-de-sac. Have we even confirmed, can a school bus even get down
no,
those roads? I mean, that's a 700-foot road.
And I'm not sure, if the school district was even contacted to ask if they would be providing internal bus service into there, because
if they were, that I wasn't made aware, and I sit on facilities, so I didn't hear about it, but it could have happened. My point is that a 700-foot road, we're going to have a string of cars sitting at the ends of these 3 entrances every morning with parents who have driven their kid from the end of the cul-de-sac out to Newtown Road to wait for the bus.
You're right.
So I know that you have concerns about the inside. You made reference to it in your, report. And that's just another thing that just popped into my head. School buses, fire trucks, but whatever, trash,
Yes.
But it just dawned on me, we're going to have a line of cars at the end of these roads every day waiting with school kids to catch a bus out on Newtown Road.
Right.
Okay.
Amy, can you comment on the access point that was referred to earlier, the furthest point that would be servicing those denser lots? Is that an existing location? And if not, is that a location that PennDOT is even going to allow for an access point?
Which, can we get the plan back up with?
Yeah, it's the one I don't.
I got it.
The furthest east.
Yeah, I got you.
The one that.
Okay.
Yes. Is that an existing?
I believe it is an existing, but, obviously, it's existing for a house.
Okay,
And
so it's
now
not an
we're
existing
altering
roadway.
use. And-
Okay.
And I will assure you that when we go through HOP, that, in my opinion, these driveways should all be looked at for site distance. Even though they are prior existing conditions, I don't think that that means that we allow them to continue in that manner. There may be site distance issues that perhaps we could, do some trimming or something to help them out. But that particular location, if it's not coming in a 90-degree angle, PennDOT may require them to change the access. The one-way access that's further down, there's two of them actually that don't come in to Newtown Road at the 90 degrees that we like them to come into for better sight lines. And I believe that those comments were out there back during conditional use. So those things will be vetted out at that point.
And the other question I had was just related to the interconnectivity within the development. You've got a lot of experience. Do you see a lot of developments put in with these types of roadways where none of them connect with one another?
Well, back in the 70s, they did that pretty frequently, and they learned that you end up having issues much like what you were saying, that you don't have that ability to move from one side to the other or move to alternative accesses depending on where you're going. Ideally, you're going to come in and provide access to the different areas, possibly even coming out Godfrey, but it's not up to us to force them to make those design changes. Those are things that we can recommend, but ultimately how they decide to develop the property is up to them as long as they follow the requirements of your CELDO and zoning.
That road at Godfrey is, if it's the interconnecting roadway that I think it is, and Mr. Scott can probably answer this, it comes out at the curve right across from Overbrook, right? I mean, that internal roadway makes its way over to Godfrey, right?
That's an existing feature that will not exist. It is not intended as a road. It is not intended as circulation in this plan. It comes to a point where it will cul-de-sac, and then if somebody who buys the lots along this area also buys the area behind it, if they want to use it to access that, but it's not intended for the use of anybody other than the abutting property owner past that cul-de-sac.
I understand that, but even beyond that, my point is that I'm trying to think of where it comes out onto Godfrey Road.
But it goes through somebody else's property.
No, I
We couldn't even use it if we had to.
Right, it goes the one that's at the curve.
I don't care where it comes out because it's not ours.
Okay.
I was answering what Regina was asking me, and is the circulation here something that should be better planned? And in my opinion, yes, it should be, but that's just my opinion on this.
Can I put in my
That's
2
something
cents?
we need to weigh in when we're considering all these
Yeah,
waivers.
those concerns with access and circulation have all been brought up by the fire codes official also for access for fire apparatus.
Do we have comments from them, or is there anything in writing on that?
I've received comments from them from discussions, and they're worked into my comments. And again, they're put forth in front of you for consideration for these waivers that are being requested.
I was thinking about your comments and your letter. Basically, it seems to me that you state what the requirements are, and then the applicant asks for a waiver, but we don't get a sense of how bad it is. In other words, if it's 60 feet and they're asking for a 28-foot right-of-way, you would have a perception of, how great the waiver is. We don't have a scope and size on these waivers. I don't think, it's difficult to just grant them and not know, if it's half the distance, a quarter of the distance, or whatever.
you know what, Skip, that's what I was asking about with the cul-de-sac. Oftentimes when we see a waiver, it says the ordinance requires this, the applicant is providing this and asking for a waiver. And that's why I was asking about the cul-de-sac at the end of I have no idea. We're supposed to have, I think, 60. Is it 35? Is it 40? Is it 25? I have no idea. I mean, Amy's telling me a bus can't go down, so it's got to be pretty small. But yeah, that would be helpful information to have as context of how extreme are the requests for the waivers. I mean, a cartway is usually supposed to be 24. I think I just happen to know that one.
Yes.
24.
Right.
And in most of these, they're asking for 20.
Yes.
Okay. But I don't know about some of the rest of it.
Wasn't Jardin 25 or something?
And Amy, as
Yes.
part of your normal review, you wouldn't give comments like you just did on the internal circulation, would you? Well, let's put
Would
it like
I-
this. It
would
would be
I-
nice. I would like them anyway. I mean, I'd like
Okay.
to understand your comments from a traffic perspective and a safety perspective of, you know, where we might be, could improve upon it and why.
Quite honestly, there's and I believe that I had made some comments during the conditional use hearing, and
I
talking
think
about
Amy-
the number of driveways that were taking access to Newtown Road, that the more accesses you have to a roadway, the more potential conflicts that you have. What I don't know is, and I'm going to have to defer to Peter on this, is that, you know, now that we have a conditional use hearing for this, are the roads, you know, are these accesses something that they're stuck with now? Are there changes that can be made to those roadway accesses and driveways? Or can those things be reconsidered at this point?
You know,
Okay. He's saying they can
Are you
be.
still wanting to talk traffic now, or I don't know how?
Could I put,
Yeah.
I wanted to be sure we covered all the major issues on traffic, because obviously we're going to be waiting now for more comments from Amy as she gets through that report.
Madam Chairman?
The one thing I'd like to say is with the traffic comments that you're providing for us, if as you're going through the traffic analysis, that's external, but if more information comes to light for you to provide to us, it would be helpful, since at this point, we don't have a planner looking at this. So if you could look at it also with a planning eye, not just a requirements met or not met.
You know, Regina, the only comment is that when their traffic expert stood up, he said that all the internal decisions were the engineers.
And I can address some of those internal
But
decisions.
before I'm not asking you yet, I'm saying that maybe Roger can graph this out a little bit for us on the internals as opposed to Amy.
Well, Amy has the expertise to analyze what was put forth by the engineer.
Maybe Roger has more expertise, is what I mean. Both is even better.
I think it's just that they hired a separate consultant to do their traffic impact study versus their traffic circulation and site development.
Well, Amy and Roger have met.
For your knowledge,
and they'll work
Amy and I
together.
work together on this. We don't work in a vacuum, so.
Hey, you've met each
We-
other, right? Amy,
Yeah, we-
Roger, Amy.
We both discuss it and go over our comments.
I'm so glad.
I mean, if you want, I can discuss the waiver request. They're, you know.
Do you want to go through the waiver request now?
Yeah,
Let's
we
do
can.
that.
Madam Chair, if
Excuse
I
me.
could, perhaps Dave Fiorello could put together a table outlining all these to provide to you. It could become part of the plan. Aside from his verbal explanation, I think everybody will have something to wrap their arms around then at that point.
If I could say something here.
There is
We do have a list.
There
on
is
the
a
plan.
table on the plan
Is there
that
a table that
indicates
shows
all of the
the-
roadways and the widths and
It
what they're
shows what the
proposed.
code would require
That's
and what they're
correct.
having. It's on there. What sheet is that?
Madam Chairman, I live in the area. I live on Abrams Lane. The traffic there is terrible. I think you really need to look at where these roads are coming in, and it's, I think, imperative that you get another exit besides the one at Abrams Lane. Because, first off, Delaware County Planning Commission will never approve something like this with this many houses with one exit and on one long driveway with cul-de-sac at the end. I think their limit is, you're pushing it to get to 12 or 8, something like that. But especially if the roads are narrow, you're going to have difficulty. There's going to be a lot of cars in there. These are going to be expensive houses. Everybody in there is going to have at least one car. So you're going to have a lot of traffic moving around. I think it's important to have some interconnection between the roads. So if you want to go visit a neighbor or another part of the property, you don't have to drive out onto Newtown Road. Now, perhaps those roads could be a narrower road, maybe a single lane to connect from one to the other. But I think interconnectivity in there is important from that respect, but also for health, safety, and welfare. Suppose a tree falls across Abrams Lane, which it did this year. Many people I tried getting from my house on Abrams Lane to my daughter's house on Spring Mill Road. I tried 6 different ways and finally ended up going west into Wayne, down Lancaster Avenue, and down, but you get my point. But when you have the storms like you would have with the trees we have, I think you need more than one way out. And when you have this many houses on one exit, it's a problem, especially with the trees in the area. And I'm not saying take the trees down by any means. But I think you need to look at a little better circulation in there. That's my major problem with this. And I understand where you're coming from, where you want to keep the narrowness, the country look of the roads. But when you're putting this many houses back there, you have to think of health, safety, and welfare of the people also. I see trash trucks get down Abrams Lane in the morning. They take up the entire path there. So if you're behind a trash truck and you want to go to work, you have to wait while that trash truck chugs along the road, stops at everybody's place, and you're going to be furious because you want to get out. You can't. You have no other option. You sit behind a trash truck. So, I think you need to consider this. Abrams Lane, what is there now, is narrow. Barely 2 cars can get by each other. And it's way too narrow for the speed that goes along there. And of course, there's going to be more increase. But I think what needs to happen before you really fine-tune everything is to look at the interconnection of roads, where they come out, because that might change where the properties are. And I think it's important to start from putting the roads in a way that would be safe and have good access, and then back up into the other stuff. So you can talk about maybe why. I think we need to know the widths now, but I think you need to maybe look at a little different tweaking on the roads and giving us another exit. Thank you.
I also have another procedural question.
Wait, he was going to identify where the chart is. But, okay.
On sheet 7, there is a chart showing the roadways, the width of the right-of-way proposed, the width of the cartway, and the lots that are being served. In most cases, our roadways are being requested at 20 feet with no curbing. Our rights-of-way, our township requirement is 24 to 28 feet. We're providing 24 feet within the Phase 2 area. This is roadway width, and a 50-foot right-of-way. The township requires a 60-foot right-of-way. We're requesting 50-foot for the Phase 2 and 40 feet for the others. That allows us 10 feet on either side of our cartway.
Mr. Fiorillo, does that, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you in the beginning, does that table, I can't see it from here, list what the requirement is, or just what you're proposing?
All of it. All of it,
It lists
Steve.
what we're being proposed.
Can you?
Could we add, so it does not have a column that says, here's what's required?
I can add one, but the current table does not.
That's what I was getting at, so that the planning commission has, in a clear,
Yes.
concise area, here's what's proposed,
That would be
here's
very
what's
helpful to
required.
us. Excuse me 1 second. Steve, you had something?
Yes, kind of be helpful for me if we could go over these one by one, but maybe at our next meeting after we had after we had the benefit of knowing here's what's required, here's what's proposed, plus we had the benefit of Amy and Roger's comments. So then we could take each one step by step, have all the information, and then kind of make a decision as to how we feel about each one. Because I feel like if we go through the presentation tonight, we'll hear what you have to say, that's nice, and then we'll have to come back and we'll have to hear it again.
I absolutely agree with you on that.
Well, if we can get the chart, that would be helpful, just because it makes it so much easier for us to make the comparison. Yeah, we did have that for Villanova. That would be helpful. And I don't think we need to like read through what they are. We've all got the paper, so we're fine. All right, so it's almost 10. Obviously, we're not going to finish tonight, so we're going to need to table at some point to the next meeting. Does anyone have any particular issues they wanted to be sure to bring up tonight?
I wanted to bring up, I guess, two things. One is, I saw a note about the fire hydrants and that they're not well delineated on here, and I'm curious, how many are there and where are they?
We have spaced our fire hydrants. They're shown on the plan. We have revised our plan to highlight them a little better. They're spaced so that there's no more than 600 feet between any particular residence and a fire hydrant.
Okay, thank you.
In accordance with the requirements.
And if I can add to that, that will be determined as part of the final plan in conjunction with the fire codes and the official and the fire marshal of the township.
No, I appreciate it. It's just on my mind because of the fire last year that happened at the back of the property. They used the fire hydrant at my house. I guess my one big overriding comment that I was going to make, depending on where we had gone tonight, and it has bothered me since the first day we saw this plan. I can't get my head around why that village section is so close to Newtown Road. I drive up Newtown Road every single day, and it's not abundantly clear to me on these plans that the water tower is being preserved and that the entire stand of trees that's inside the stone wall is going to be preserved. And it may be, but it's not abundantly clear to me because the tree line on that page wasn't well delineated. And I just look at that and I think for the entire property that we couldn't figure out a way to push those houses in further and have it be that you could continue to drive down Newtown Road and not see that development. And I felt that way since the first day we saw the plans. Well, there's that too. Who wants to see the road from their house? But
If I can.
But Dave, it was particularly brought home to me because we worked really hard on the Atterbury estate to preserve trees. I'm the one who made the suggestion that we let them have the shorter front yard setback to preserve trees, and then that thing feels like clear cut. It felt like such a slap in the face for me, who cares about trees, and I'm the one who made the suggestion to let them have the shorter front yard setback to save trees, and it didn't save that many trees, and that place feels clear cut to me. And I don't want to see the same thing happen in that section, for all the reasons that the neighbors have
Very
mentioned
well
tonight.
understood.
So
If
I
I
don't know
can
what to do
refer
there.
you to sheets 19 and 20 of the plan set, they are our 50 scale plans showing the blow up. You know, the plans you're looking at were the 200 scale, and you really can't tell that much from the 200 scale. I have the sheet 19 and sheet 20, which are the 50 scale plans. They show the buffer, the tree plantings, and the open space along Newtown Road, and the locations of the house a little bit more clear, so that we are outside of the tree stands. The water tower is being preserved,
Well,
if it can be.
it says that it's outside of the tree stand, but except there's very few trees. There's like some flowery looking things being,
We have the, from the aerial survey, the delineation in green, the tree canopy. We've located some of the individual trees along Newtown Road. They are shown in there, but generally on sheets 19 and 20 show in green the extent of the tree canopy as it exists.
so you just did it differently because other plans we've seen, they literally showed every tree and you can see how thick it is.
We haven't located every single tree along there. We've located a number of them. We have to go back and get some of the ones in the areas we know that we're going to be disturbing. But we did survey. Our individual trees are shown, sheet 20.
Yep.
Shows several in there. We just haven't shown each individual tree through that point. But our intent all along was to reserve that tree line, to preserve the water tower if we can, and that's why the houses are set back. We have that stretch of open space delineated along there to preserve that area, so the lots themselves aren't extending back into Newtown Road.
Well, those are my two comments.
One main
for now.
issue I wanted to bring up, that we won't be able to discuss in length tonight, but I want to bring it up, is I'm still very concerned about the houses being positioned above the rye field. Obviously, that's been a huge investment that the township is making towards open space, and it was one of the conditional use requirements that came out of the zoning hearing decision. In fact, it's the first one, and it says that all new construction proposed in the Lots 3 section shall be done in a fashion which provides for maximum protection of that view shed. I don't think that the plan has met that requirement. I also think that protecting that view shed will not be possible without the relocation of some of those lots, preferably the last 4 on that cul-de-sac. And we don't have to debate that tonight, but I wanted to get that out there. It's one, because that's a very important issue for me. Who else has things they want to be sure to bring up tonight?
I just wanted to mention, as we're going through the traffic analysis for the HOP permits for the Newtown Road.
Yes.
That the township is fully involved throughout the process. There's not a meeting without them. There's not a...
That was, Amy made that clear in her
Okay.
comment.
When do we expect to hear from Delaware County Planning?
I expect to hear from them, sure, with the plans were submitted back in April. It should have been, we should hear from them, surely. Thursday. Thank you.
Will we have their comments by our next meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
we should have them.
Yeah, I had a couple more. I'm especially, one of the comments in here is you're not having sidewalks. You're only putting sidewalks along one of the roads inside. I guess my question is why we're not putting more of them. I'm also concerned about the widths of the roads. You know, what's the harm in making them wider?
Loss of trees. These are tree.
Microphone, please.
I don't want to discuss all these things.
These are treed, is this on? No. These are treed alleys throughout the property that we're providing these roads through. So we're trying to maintain that nature of the property. They're rural, it's a rural setting. We're maintaining the rural setting. We don't need 28-foot wide roads and sidewalks for the few houses that are going in here. If we were putting 156 houses in here like we could, and it was a dense development, that'd be an entirely different thing.
Thank you.
Dave, on the plan, I guess the front page might be the best one to see it. There's 2 different shades of green, but the legend only indicates the one. And I'm wondering what the significance of the dark green is over the light. And perhaps the answer is, does one of them the open space and the other the required open space? It's difficult to tell where the required open space is versus the balance of the open space.
We didn't separate the 15% open space from the entire open space. I think what happens here is, in the printing of the plan, the heavier green indicates the wooded areas. So it's not trying to differentiate one open space from another. It's probably the way the plans were printed. I think we're coming up with hatches on top of print, but the darker green generally is the wooded areas of the site. What it is a gray hatch over the green that makes the green look darker, but generally everything in green is open space. Now, as John said, we're providing 84.7 acres of open space. We haven't delineated that separately from the required 47. We're showing it as open space.
And actually, then my one question, because I keep meaning to ask you this, why is there no house drawn on Lot 3-1?
Oh. That was basically shown as an open area of Phase 3 that we think will end up being preserved. We didn't plan a house on it. But because it was a separate area of ownership in that phase, it had to be a lot. It didn't have, it's not an investment parcel because it doesn't have road access to be able to further subdivide.
Well,
So it's simply a single 10-acre parcel that is not planned to put a house on at this point in time. But it needed a subdivision lot designation.
okay.
Any other issues that we need to bring up this evening? Oh, and also, is there any information that the board would like to get before our next meeting that we haven't mentioned yet?
So do we need to see a plan with the dedicated or whatever, required open space versus the non, is that something that's important to us?
We probably still have it
I'm
on
sure you
the
could just turn a
conditional
layer
use
on
plan
and
that
print it
we could
out.
Regina, I think we saw it for conditional.
Do we want to see that with the
We
stormwater
could see it
management
again, yeah.
basins, et cetera? Like, could you just overlay that on the stormwater
I
plan?
think the easiest thing to do is to take the stormwater areas, to compute them, to show them and subtract them out of the 84.7 acres so that you see how much compliant open space there is on the plan.
Okay.
That's the easiest.
That'll work.
Is it possible, do you have these plans electronically? I mean, I'm sure somebody does, but the reason I
The
ask is
township
that...
does.
Yes.
Township,
We
you do?
have them as PDFs.
Okay, all righty. I just saw Steve with his iPad tonight, and I thought, oh, that would have been an easier way to carry them in tonight.
That doesn't build muscles.
I was going to ask another question. I brought up sidewalks again. Maybe beating this one to death. Sidewalks along Newtown Road. If we're talking about the Ryfield and connecting over to the Willows, and there's just no room.
I think it would be important to identify that we should get easements for sidewalks on Newtown Road. Right now, it looks like it'd be very difficult to build anything there. But that doesn't mean in the future, even far in the future, that road might not shift. There might be able to property on the other side, something that we could do. I would think for the benefit of our overall trail and sidewalk plan that we show a right-of-way or some kind of, something there for a sidewalk, because ultimately, if we could get people on a sidewalk, it'd be so much safer on that road.
Exactly the point I wanted to make.
Sorry.
I have one more comment, too. David, the cul-de-sac for the village,
Yes, sir.
is there any major reason why you didn't want it to connect to the Abrams Lane Road as well? That would have solved all sorts of circulatory issues, I would think.
That goes through an area of significant plannings. It's almost like a, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I appreciate what you're saying about the 20-foot roads and everything else, but the best way to preserve the whole thing would be not to build at all. But since we're going to build, we have to take into account safety and the situation of the homeowner. I mean, you can't,
Understand, and I hope
trash-
you understand that we met with your staff and went through these sizes as well and didn't plan them without the concurrence of staff that they would be acceptable widths.
Well, I'm not as, I have an issue with the dimension of the road, but I'm saying the connection for 18 houses with one access point to Newtown, I just don't get that. And I think if it connected over the Abrams connection, that would help.
I hear
It's
what
my
you're saying.
opinion. It's
I hear
my
what you're saying.
Okay, we are going to wrap up soon. Is there anything else, any other information you'd like from the applicant?
I just wanted to answer your question about right-of-way or easement along, except in the area that is going to be owned by the township. There's a wall on Newtown Road. The wall and the right-of-way width are basically the same. There isn't a place outside the right-of-way to give you an easement. You own, I mean, the right-of-way goes to the wall, within feet.
We had talked about in a previous meeting, actually even potentially putting it on the inside of the wall.
And that we're not willing to provide public trail or public sidewalk easements with inside the compound of the development.
Well, it seems like the logical thing to do would be to move the wall. Sorry.
Yeah. I just wanted you to understand that when you ask that, you already have.
I understand the problem.
Publicly, it's
Yeah.
not even a
But if
problem.
the right-of-way is to there.
Publicly, you have that road, that
have that.
area already, is what I was trying to say.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. We're going to get ready to table this. When will we be looking at this again?
Next meeting.
Well, we want to give Amy enough time, and we want to hear from Delaware Valley Planning Commission. Thank you.
We were just talking amongst ourselves.
Okay.
So by the next meeting, this regularly scheduled July meeting, there wouldn't be enough time for all the traffic review to be done. So my recommendation, my suggestion would be, we have a special meeting again on our Drossen.
Okay.
We'll kind of base it on, we'll have Sue send out the emails and base it on when Amy can be finished her review, follow that week timeline that you've requested, and we would move forward there. So that way, everything's still moving forward.
Okay, let's do that. So probably about a month from now, hopefully.
See the date. So we would,
Good, 'cause I'm not going to
so we have the meeting on the 30th. We can do it in July. We might just have to have another meeting.
You supposedly have a meeting July 7th.
We're not going to be ready.
I have to get my review letters in well over a week beforehand so that they can get it in time to review it. So that cuts us really short. You have a special planning commission meeting on the 30th, July 30th. I remember seeing discussions about that.
Okay.
I can
That's for the
definitely-
Villanova conditional use.
is that the only thing that can be on that evening?
We were talking about it. It wasn't official yet.
We're doing some around, an extra one around.
They didn't send it back.
Well, I
just
should have
yet,
had
but They
that
were collecting
TIS.
dates from everybody to try to pick a day.
I think we should just put it in the August meeting because we didn't have enough time to,
Yeah.
if the TIS was done earlier, we could have had a look at it tonight, but how can we have to give our engineer enough time to look at it.
Yeah.
I think if we, since.
And we cannot mix this with CDIC. That's just
But
not possible.
This is of the magnitude that it could command its own meeting.
Yes.
So if we base it, we could have an additional special meeting based on when Amy can get that review done, get it to the planning commission within a week of that, so you have plenty of time to go over that. That would be my recommendation to move forward.
Okay, we're going to leave that in your hands.
We'll
to
take
work
care of it
that
from
out.
a
The
staff
one
standpoint.
question there is we were having a hard time even scheduling that 30th meeting, to
Right,
get
we
a
ha-
quorum.
They'll have to get a quorum. That's
So if
part
we
of the
can't,
problem.
what are we doing if we can't schedule another one? Is it August then?
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm hoping we can get a quorum. So Susan will work her magic over here, and I'm sure she'll come up with the appropriate amount of people.
She's an amazing person.
We're also going to have Delaware County's comments in.
Available.
I think I would like to have all the comments together so we can then just kind of go through this.
We can provide you back with all the packets from the Gilmore letters, the Gannon Fleming letters, all that good stuff, along with Delaware County Planning Commission. Amy's additional comments based on the traffic impact study?
I guess what I'm saying is I would prefer to have it to make sure we have Delaware, to have everybody's information.
I
before we
concur. I think
schedule.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
I guess I'll talk to you later about it.
Okay, can I get a motion to table? Second?
Second.
Hang on. Do we need an extension? Do we need to request an extension from the applicant?
I think it'd be safe.
Probably not yet. We'll deal with that.
You'll take care of that?
They're good until August 8th.
Okay, and we had a second?
Offer it
Yep.
if you want.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much.